it got kicked out. Good evening. I'm just getting the technology loading again. But welcome and happy Valentine's Day to everybody, and welcome to our regular council meeting of February the 14th. Just before we get started, there are some remarks that I would like to share and present to you this morning. And a lot of this has to do just with media queries, comments on postings, reactions, and such that I'm hearing around the community in regards to the library and our acquisition of the Lot A property, which is the property on Wadham's Way. So I just wanted to share sort of my perspective on this, giving my thoughts on the matter, and nothing, of course, that is in camera. Most of the negotiations I wasn't present for, so this is just an overview from my perspective. First off, when I think about town centre development, there's a number of challenges that always come to mind and a lot of barriers as to why we are not developing our town. Anytime a business wants to expand or do something, what do we hear? Parking issues, drainage issues, the topography, protection of viewscapes, and of course dealing with the province and Highway 14 and the limitations we have when it comes to that road. Since incorporation, our population as of the 2011 census was actually 8,735 residents. And now with the new data, we're at 13,001 resident, 13.6% growth since the last 2011 census, and since incorporation, that's roughly 48.8%. It's incredible growth. Council is aware of this, we hear about it, and that's where the last council put forward a referendum question. Would you support the District of Sault working with the community to develop multi-use community centre facilities, a yes or no? An overwhelming 3,072 responding with a yes. And so since then, it's been a desire for us to deal with emerging needs and to help improve the lives of those that live here and those that choose to live here. So when you look at Lot A, 5.2 acre parcel between the Evergreen Mall and Wadham's Way. You take a good look at it. Level land adjacent to existing commercial property in the town centre, no existing buildings or remediation or major cleanup, full egress onto Wadham's Way, a new municipal road with paved multi-use trails, sidewalks, street lights, banners, and seasonal adornments. How many roads can we say that about within our town? This is a municipal road in the town centre, and this land borders it. Council pursued this property for several years, and we successfully acquired it in early 2015. And I believe that Council invested in these key lands for future facilities. In terms of the library history, 2001 online services were launched. In 2008, I was the alternate to Councillor Dumont, and I remember him sharing the news because e-books were being launched out of the library, and just how great this would be to seniors, persons with mobility issues, as they can do everything from home, and they won't need to go into the site anymore to make their way there. Since then, so much has evolved. I mean, look, working with iPads here, multiple different devices. Every book that I read this year, and now mind you, there's only about 8, are on this one device. I don't have to cart them around anymore. All the research is e-research, books, video, music. Users don't need to go to the facility, and so this has posed a real challenge for the libraries as they are, and so their evolving needs are always to deal with programming, particularly for children, multi-purpose meeting space, community workshops, study space for youth, lounge areas, gathering places, and the like. In 2012, Councillor Ray, our representative of the library, advised us that VRL, the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board, had completed their facility plan, Sault being at the top of the list. And they're doing so because of the age of our current facility, the need to upgrade it, and our growing population. So since then, exploring lands for a new site led the VRL to look around town, and eventually they put out an expression of interest to source a new site. 5 options were presented. Council insisted that they all be within the town centre, but unfortunately none met their criteria. Too expensive, size constraints, unsuitable, the list goes on. The existing lease on the current building, they don't own this building, it's a leased building, will expire in 2018 with no renewal option available. And I do want to add that the previous council attempted to acquire the Mulligan site, thinking that might potentially work maybe as a library or other community facilities, but we were not successful at the auction. We also took a run at Lot A at that time. Also, the previous council did, and we're not successful with that either. The library has a model, a standard that they use with all their facilities, a 10,000 square foot single-story building with parking and accessibility. We know that the time is ticking on this, on our library, so council continued to examine options. But as we know at the time, we had no land in our holdings. We have parks and we had industrial land. So even John Phillips Memorial Park, right next to us, was considered at a possible site. But that didn't go down very well with the community, so we quickly abandoned that idea. So then the Lot A opportunity came available again, and council acquired the land. A portion was offered to the library board, maybe about a fifth of the site. And I remember being there in the SUPPLEMENTARY with all the representatives from the Vancouver Island Library, and they were applauding the purchase when they were here, and they toured the site. That was early March, I believe, of last year. So following that, discussions were held. They were looking at the site. Where would they put the facility? We want it here, but we also, as a municipality, need to consider other emerging needs of our community. So we cannot have the library determine, because of course they just wanted to be in the middle of it initially, but what about everything else? When the location settled, they began their due diligence. They did their due diligence, and the servicing costs came up to close to $800,000. Council, via Councillor Ray, pushed the library to consider a smaller facility, perhaps one that could be expanded in future years. This might offset those costs to a net zero. And that's a reasonable request. I supported that idea. Considering a new facility would be over 3 times the size of the existing one, certainly room for expansion seemed to make sense. But unfortunately that didn't go. They have a model, and that's how it's going to be. They're very set as they go. We're not the only community that needs a library. They're all over the island, and there has to be continuity or a similar standard from one community to the next. Other communities have been luckier. They've had sites that have foreclosed that they've been able to pick up for very reasonable prices. Others have immense land in their holdings that they could use. Others place them near recreation centers, thinking to co-locate would make the most sense. It just depends on the makeup of each community. We're all different. So as a council, you think, okay, if we're going to pursue a cost like that, it needs to go to a referendum, surely. And if we did so, wouldn't you want to consider the other needs in the community at the same time? Consider what it would be to service the entire site. But in order to consider servicing, don't you need some idea of what you actually want to do there? Certainly, we've received a list of recommendations from our committee. Everyone here can probably name at least 3 ideas off the top of their head in no time, and certainly probably all of you could as well. There's many questions. We need more community feedback. We need more time to have this conversation. The library board does not have time. They need to start building. Otherwise, we don't have a library at all. Director Mike Hicks is also a library trustee. He works with us at CPark, he works with us on the regional board, and he also has an interest in the library because the current facility is regional after all, servicing all the way from East Souk through Souk to Shirley. He's aware of the library's facility plans, and CPark also completed their facility plan, and so the front green space of the CPark facility became an option for Verl to consider. Our desire, though, has always been to have it in the town centre. We've always wanted it there, but we realize this is not our library. It's not Souk Municipal Library. It's a regional library. And so while we can influence the decision, it's not our decision in the end to make. You could argue that CPark has advantages, located near schools, residents, and it's on transit. I mean, after all, the library is focused on school-age kids. Transit, the main 61 goes by, and the community loop, the beginning of a community loop, drops residents right at the door. You could say, perhaps, that with the library and myself on there and myself on Transit Commission, we can advocate for a better return loop system and more service improvements to the community bus. If it does land at Sea Park in the end, there'll be a brand new modern $6 million facility at no additional cost to the residents. So again, that decision is up to Verl. There's a few developers I know that have now heard, are very interested in Souk, of course, for many different reasons. It's the best place to be. That have also coming up with ideas, but they're all in direct contact with the library board as well, so I don't know what's happening, and really we're waiting to see what they decide to do. So let's say they go there. Well, then what becomes with this Lot A property? This infamous Lot A level property in the town center with access on a municipal road. We've heard about drainage. Well, water flows downhill. This property is at the head of it. Maybe we can just begin addressing the drainage issues in the town center, the ones that have just hit every single property downstream from this. We have the report from the Community Center Advisory Committee, and everyone here, like I said, can come up with ideas. Council invested in town center land for Souk's future and its growing needs. And seeing how I was on leave at the time, although consulting by the acting mayors, if I had to write a headline on this, I would say that the mayor applauds councillors for their foresight. So thank you all for really considering the community's needs. So on that, I'm going to call the council meeting to order. And I would like an approval of the agenda with some new business. Is there new business? No, okay. Just approval of the agenda, please, as presented. Moved by Councillor Ray and seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any? Sorry? So is it open for discussion? The agenda? Yeah. It was Councillor Berger that moved it and Councillor Pearson seconded it. Yeah. And Councillor Pearson has a question.
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
I see that Staff Sergeant MacArthur is here, so can we move him to the beginning of the reports tonight?
Yes, that is an agenda. So we will make that motion then with the Staff Sergeant moved. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. We have the minutes from January 23rd regular council meeting. Moved by Councillor Casper. Seconded by Councillor Pearson. Are there any corrections? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, so that brings us to Staff Sergeant MacArthur. Thank you. It's nice to see you. Spending Valentine's with us. I won't keep you too long.
Thanks, thanks, Your Worship. Thanks for having me here tonight, and thanks for moving me to the start of the meeting again. I was going to speak also about violence in relationships, so maybe I should table that and not ruin the mood of Valentine's Day. But I was just going to give you an overview. I haven't been here for a couple of quarters, so since we're so close to the calendar year end, which is the year end for all our statistics, I was going to go just briefly over some statistics, and I just thought since I've been away for a little while, there may be some questions, so we'd leave time for that. Most of these statistics have already been put out. Our prisoner numbers, I'll go over first. For 2016, for some reason, we're down about 53 prisoners from 2015, and it's pretty much the lowest year we had for prisoners since 2012, but not, there's nothing remarkable. I can't think of any actual reason for it. It wasn't like we were sending prisoners to West Shore like we were for a little while and wouldn't be recording them in Souk. The number of files, one interesting statistic that we pulled up, just out of interest, as for our the division between how our members are spending their time, as you know, we have we'll be going up to 12 members for the District of Souk, and we still have 4 provincial members who all blend together, and we assign them duties accordingly, or they go where the calls come from. We also probably spoke to you about the general duty staffing analysis program that we're undergoing, and we still don't have any results from that to report. But as far as where members are spending their time and all the rest of it, it's pretty much dependent on members' computer in the car and them keeping really accurate status on what they're doing at the time, whether they're attached to a file, in transit, in the office, all this kind of thing. And for the most part, or for a large degree, our officers are offline, have no computer service, even within SUC, and as soon as they get even close to getting out of SUC, their computer's offline, so I'm not sure how helpful that's actually going to be for us. But when we look at it, and this actually surprised me going back several years, as you know, when we go to forward of 16, that's 25% of the detachment is actually largely dedicated to the rural area. When I go back to 2010, the rural files are 23% for 2010. 2011, 22%, 23%, 22%, 23%, 25%, and 23% for last year. So it's almost exactly where you would expect it to be, at least from an accountant's point of view. I tend to think there's a lot more time of the officers of all 16 being spent within the district of Suc, but file-wise, file load, it's almost right down to the decimal point, evenly distributed as far as where the money's coming from. So that I found a little surprising, because I thought it would be skewed a little bit more the other way. Our files continue to grow, and it really justifies more of a conversation if it is a point of interest. We broke the 6,000 mark in 2016. 6,015. We're down to this point in the year. We're down a little bit from last year, so I don't know if that's going to continue. But there's not a lot to be made from these type of statistics, other than it's really safe to say that we are a lot busier, or substantially busier than we were in 2010. But as you know, when there's more calls for service, then we're just tied up with calls that are generated from people, and less tied up with calls like last night, where our members, you might have read in the paper, arrested the person coming out of a home on Church Road that generates a lot of business for us. The statistics are the same, whether they're phoned in by people or whether we generate ourselves. So all it seems to be happening with us is that there's less self-generated work being done by members and more being called in. So I think that actually, realistically, we're even busier than the statistics are showing. And on the horizon, I was out in Shirley today. Well, I live out in Shirley, but I was out there on business. And the pressure from tourists out there is really ramping up. And I expect that, and this is no secret for you folks, to translate into a lot more time for us along the highway and in Port Renfrew and in Shirley. So even at this time of year, they're experiencing a lot more, like phenomenally more traffic than before. So I think this summer we might notice quite a big difference, and I'm not sure if we'll see it in statistics. So that's about all I have for those stats. We keep statistics on everybody. I keep, as a detachment rule, I keep statistics on members, on the number of files that they take. We track their traffic tickets, all this kind of thing, the amount of crowns that they submit, crown reports for charges to Crown Council. And everyone plays a certain type of role. We get really good contribution from every member of our detachment as it happens. There are, when we ran the statistics for 2016, there were a couple of people, I don't normally like to point this kind of thing out, but Constable Jamie Robinson and Constable Heidi Sherman both contributed for the detachment. Jamie did almost 22% of the reports to Crown Council, and Heidi Sherman did 20. It's really phenomenal performance. It's worth noting. Detachment strength in the front office. Our support staff, right now we're down to 2, where we should have 4. We still have 1 vacancy that we've moved quite close to getting to the point of filling it. So I think that's only months away. Unfortunately, we have 1 staff member on sick leave indeterminately. So they are stretched, and we're going into an emergency process to hire another person in the meantime, which probably will take us 3 weeks. We've finally identified our new member. There was an administrative delay. As you know, I think the funding came in September for that, and we will just be receiving that member in April. Part of the delay was the federal letter of approval, approving the federal money for that. That set us back a few months, but that person has been named and will be arriving here in mid-April. Let's see. Carbine training. Carbine is the machine gun, for lack of a better word. We have more than half of the staff trained on that, and we've just purchased a new one they run about $4,000. Traffic enforcement, ramping up traffic enforcement where we can. I'd say it's safe to say that the discretionary time that my officers enjoy is declining, which means they're just driven by calls for service and doing investigations that are presented to them, and we have less time to manage their time and say, get to Grant Road and do some traffic, or go here and let's do a drug project. That time is dwindling, which means there's less proactive work. There's less time for us to catch people who cause disruptions in the community, and do the one of three things that we try to do with these people: is get them to stop committing crimes and blend with the healthy community, get them to move back to where they came from or somewhere else, or get them into jail. So there's less time for us to do that, and we're reacting to more crime. So anyway, but that being said, we are doing traffic enforcement, have laid numerous tickets on Grant Road, and are ramping up a little bit for the next few weeks on not only Grant Road, but the portion that of Otter Point Road that turns into a 30K zone down to the junction of Otter Point and Souk Road, and as well as Souk and West Coast Road, where we have higher accident rates. Yeah, I think that is pretty much it. If anyone had any questions.
Thank you very much. So in terms of, I think in the future, at a previous meeting, we were talking about an impact that you had also for crisis support.
Right, and I believe I'm back here next weekend to address that specifically.
Okay. So
next meeting. Yeah.
Next meeting for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of how things could improve for the detachment, is it that the need for more, I mean, we can do what we can to address people from doing things, but there's only so much you can do to discourage that. Mm-hmm. Is it more that you need more bodies in the office to take the admin level off of officers, or is it both, or is it more officers out in the community?
I think that 4 in the office is a good number. Mm-hmm. So that's really our problem. That's our issue that we need to solve. And I mean, the staffing, the public service process is just really flawed, deeply flawed, I think. And there's no, like, for example, Saanich Police, someone goes, from one section, from major crime to another section. They get someone in, they overlap, learn the job, and then that person moves on. We almost never have that in the public service, and it takes us, a year to 2 years to replace someone. So there's no sharing of that knowledge. Like Deb Stephen, one of our, she'd been in the public service for, I don't know how long it was. It was a lengthy time. She was a records management expert. No overlap at all. She's long gone, and we're into 18 months before we replace her, right? So, so not only long gone, but then the new person comes into a huge backlog. So that's completely the RCMP. That's not anything that you've shortchanged us on. But I think, and this is no news, but you have to start looking at a substantial increase in our establishment of police officers, considering the way the population is growing, and also considering the way we're situated at the outside of a major metropolitan center, if you want to call Victoria that, and to not be able to compete leaves us kind of vulnerable, I guess.
Okay. My other follow-up question, machine gun training?
Yes. Carbines. I know there's a more politically correct term, if you'd like, and this falls. This is a recommendation that's in place from the officers being killed in Moncton, that this be rolled out faster than it was, and so we have them in the vehicles, and we were a little behind, a little slow to get a few trained, but now we're up to 8, which I think is probably better than we expected. Yeah.
Because I'm picturing like a big. It just sounds very aggressive to me. So in our community to have.
Well, you know, I think that...
I don't know anything about guns. It's just when you hear a machine gun, I wouldn't even know what carbine would be.
And that's what it is. You know, it's a semi-automatic rifle. Okay. And I know that your opinion would change tomorrow if we actually needed to put it into action. But right now, when it's not needed, you know, there's always those questions. So do you want a police force that's unable to handle a potential threat, or do you want one that's ready? You won't see us packing them into the stick in the mud.
No,
but they're in the car if we need them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Unless the price of coffee goes up substantially.
Yeah, absolutely. Councillor Pearson.
Welcome back. Thank you. And I'm sorry to hear that you were not feeling well a couple of times when we were there. So.
Thanks very much.
I have 2 questions. A run on the staffing levels. One of the things that we've heard in the past is about the vulnerability from that window of 2 in the morning to 4 in the morning. Has that improved with the addition of the other officer, or do you anticipate that to?
I don't see that improving. We're still not. We're on the same schedule that we were before. We still have that 3 to 7 or 4 to 7 on some days, so that 3 or 4 hour window of opportunity, and you know, for anyone who wants to take advantage of it. And what kind of saves Souk is you don't have a large commercial base here. If this was Sydney, it would be hard to keep up with how much crime that would generate.
Okay, thanks. And the second question I have is more of a general question. Seems to be that there's rumors around fentanyl in our community. Is that becoming more prevalent? Fentanyl or carfentanil? Are you making inroads to that, or seeing it, or discovering it, or is it?
We've had five opiate-related deaths since I got here 3 years ago. One of them was fentanyl-related. Are we seeing it? Yes. Yeah, we are. We also have intelligence from drug users that they, and I put this out in a media release more as a warning for, illicit drug users, that there's 2 things that have been reported to us. Is one that there's recreational cocaine users who have some of them who work in jobs that do blood testing or urine testing, and cocaine actually moves through your system pretty fast. So if you know what you're doing, they'll time it for when they go back to work, when they know they're being tested, and it'll wash through. But they're even though they don't use opiates, they're being suspended and whatnot because of opiates showing up. So they're saying that in Souk, the cocaine they've been purchasing is being spiked with opiates, and we suspect possibly fentanyl too. And then the other thing we've had reported to us is actually drug dealers just being sloppy and mistaking cocaine for opium, and people, almost losing their lives, thinking they were taking cocaine and they were taking heroin, and when they're not used to it and they have no tolerance, whether it's got fentanyl in it or not, you could overdose just on the first use, right? So we put out a warning about that. I don't know if that answers your question, Councillor. Or?
Yeah, it's in a general sense is that we're being exposed to it. We're not immune to it here. Mm-hmm. And I guess the second part of that question is that with the task force with the federal government and the provincial government, are you hearing of any benefits that potentially be coming your way in?
Benefits from the task force?
Yeah.
You know what? I could look into that for you, but I haven't heard.
Well,
no.
And my question is that how far does that trickle out? I hear a lot of media attention being paid, and there's committees and things like that. But it's on the street level where we actually need the improvement. So hopefully you see some benefit for that in our community.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'll look into that, and possibly I can get back to you. I don't know if you wanted to hear or personally, but it would be a good thing to look into. And on the carfentanil thing, I also put this out in a media release. It is established that is on the island, and that would stand to reason anyway, seeing as, some things come here from the Orient or wherever through Victoria, rather than from the mainland this way. So,
thanks.
Are there any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much. Great to see you again, and
thank you.
Look forward to your next presentation.
Thanks very much.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on into the agenda. Our next item, item 5, is our public question and comment period. This is a 2-minute allocation for any matter on this evening's agenda as it's presented here. We will, at this point, require your name and address, and if you could also let us know which agenda item it is, then that way we can go to the relevant report. It does help us locate and have a bit of reference.
Ellen Lors, 5526 Grove. The Sewer Reserve Fund, there's a surplus amounts from sewer operations. How much are they? Just would like to know that for information. And the other question I have is on page 61 of the report to Capital Regional District Board about making the ENN rail trail, a cost of $6.1 million, estimated at the end of 15 years to be $7,609,000, paying an annual debt servicing of $507,000 to move how many people? I question that. Transportation is a big issue. We've talked about light rail, we've talked about rail systems, and it'd be a real shame, again, to destroy that transportation roadway, because that should be a railway. The same thing happened with the Galloping Goose. We can't use it because they put, when Mayor McGregor was in here and they were putting in the natural gas line, and I said, I don't think that's a good idea. If you're putting it there, put it on the road, don't put it on the rail, because that could be where we move our people. And he says, how long do you think that's going to take? I said, probably 10 years at the rate of growth. And yet that gas line right down the center of the trail, even though we can still, if we clean out the sides, put a railway in, put an 18-inch gauge railway, but I really would like to see us be a little more diligent in our transportation, to put in. I mean, why are we building sidewalks? We build sidewalks, they're trails. Sidewalks are expensive to build. Sidewalks are for walking on. So why are we building more trails? We need to move more people. Highways aren't moving the people efficiently. Rails do. So I hope that we as a council here vote against that. I think that's really ridiculous. You can look at the letter from Catherine Holt there. She said, with our region facing serious challenges as the rising costs and decreasing inventories of housing and inadequate transportation systems.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Lewis.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions? Second time? Is there anyone else that I can call up for a first time? Okay, just, yes, Ms. Lors. There are 2 minutes.
It's the only way I can do the 2-minute thing. So, in response to your remarks, Mayor Tate,
They're actually not up for discussion because this is my comments.
Okay, well, it's comments and it's also on the agenda.
Well, it's not actually.
The library discussion?
Is the library on the agenda? Am I missing something? Okay, the Rise and Report. Okay, you can comment on the Rise and Report.
So, again...
Sorry.
Yes, again, I want to say that where it was proposed to be, there are also registered roads, municipal roads. There's Air Manor Road, there's Otter Point Road, there's Eustis Road, there's Shields Road. So, those places to me make more sense to have the library. And also, I want to say that I'm quite opposed to building the library at Sea Park. I think that's totally out of the town center and doesn't do anything for the town center. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lors. I think pretty much everyone here would agree with you there. Any other comments? Okay, then we'll shift right into our agenda. 6.1 is the Sewer Reserve Fund bylaw. We do have a motion here. However, there was a question, though, in terms of what is in the reserve fund. I'm wondering if perhaps staff may have a response for that.
Yes, Your Worship. I don't have the budget in front of me, but I believe for 2016 we had budgeted $175,000 to be in the ending balance in the reserve fund. So 2017 budget we're still working through, of course. And really the reserve would be for capital only, so it wouldn't be for operating costs.
Sorry, could you just repeat that number from the budget for me, please?
I believe that
175?
2016 was 175.
175. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Councillor Berger.
Yes, thank you. So in looking at this agenda, and we have the bylaw in front of us, at our last council meeting we had, was that like a policy statement or was that just the staff report that led to the bylaw? Because in that, sorry, through you to Mr. Blackhall, in that report it talked about a figure of having a minimum amount transferred, am I remembering correctly? It was like $50,000 or something for the sewer revenue, but we were going to keep the bylaw, or sorry, keep the reserve fund at a minimum standard. I thought I remembered.
Through Your Worship, I don't have the report from last time in front of me. I don't think, like the police reserve one we had talked about, a minimum.
Okay, sorry.
I think it may have been.
I think maybe I'm
one.
getting that one mixed up. My only other question with reading through this bylaw is when we talk about capital, where it says that it can only be used for, sorry, I'm just going to look right here. I had it highlighted.
Sewer capital expenditures.
Sewer capital expenditures. Does that include expansion, or is it just capital within our existing system right now?
Through Your Worship, it wouldn't be enough to cover any expansion.
Okay.
This really is just minor capital. So at the very largest item, probably replacement of what normally is like a centrifuge, but it could be a screw press, it could be another type. Those are, anywhere from up to 150 to 300,000 per item. It'd be stuff like that. We wouldn't be able to use this ever for funding
Any future
expansion.
capital.
That would be millions of dollars. Yep.
Okay, thank you. And that was my biggest question, was because it wasn't, for me, it wasn't 100% clear if the capital was for future expansion, and I was going to speak against that in that, if a developer or somebody wants to expand, I think then, they need to pay the share rather than people that are paying for it right now. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Councillor Casper, then Parkinson.
So, in the last council meeting, there was discussion, and there was actually reference to that the fund would be used for repairs and maintenance of existing sewer infrastructure, and it said rather than future expansion. So I guess my question is that why could that not be included in the bylaw? Because I have concerns that down the road somebody may earmark that money, if it's not specified now, for expansion purposes. And we set up DCC funds on the basis of future expansion based on growth. And, I'm prepared to rescind or make a motion to rescind third reading and then make an amendment at second reading and to see if that will fly. Because I take everybody at their word, but sometimes what's written here, and you look at the bylaw, they're not the same. Because it's very open-ended in that bylaw. It doesn't say in the bylaw what staff have dutiful said and what we have assumed it means. So I'm feeling more comfortable if we had it written in the bylaw. So there is no doubt in the future.
If I may clarify, Councillor Casper, so where, you're looking at the point number 3,
Yes.
Money in the reserve fund and interest earned on it may be used only for sewer capital expenditures, but to actually broaden that statement?
Yes, to broaden it.
And to have it amended
Well, accordingly, and it would say that the fund that is to be used for repairs and maintenance of existing sewer infrastructure rather than future expansion. And so that when that statement is maintenance and repairs, those are clearly capital items, because those are investments that go into the pipes, go into the nuts and bolts, all of the things that make the sewer system run. They are clearly defined as capital. Every other component of our sewer operation is maintenance. And so on the maintenance perspective, that's a different story, because those items have never been classified as capital related. There's minor capital, but major capital are two different things. And I don't know, maybe Brent could elaborate on that.
Comments from staff?
Yep, through your worship. I would just say the maintenance, ideally we'd fund through operations. Definitely repairs, and if we have to replace. So replacement and repair would be what this would be used for. So I don't have a problem with any wording change to it myself. So.
Okay. Councillor Parkinson?
I was basically going there as well because it was in the minutes on page 4 and 5 from our previous meeting, where it says that the bylaw was to set aside the fund to be used for repairs and maintenance to existing sewer infrastructure than future expansion. So that's what was moved.
Okay, so council, would you like to consider then Councillor Cansper?
Well, the process then would be, I would move that third reading of this bylaw, and I got to get the number of bylaw number 661, 2017, the Sewer Reserve Fund bylaw, be rescinded. The third reading be rescinded.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Berger. Discussion on rescinding. Councillor Berger?
Sorry if I'm repeating the question, Councillor Casper, that's, for clarification, that's basically what I had asked as well, right? If it's only, just so it clearly states that it's for our existing sewer system, no new expansion. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Pearson?
So then, by the rescinding, then we would go back to second reading. Is that what you're proposing with the wording change?
Yes. And so now, so what I'll, so yeah, by rescinding third, then it puts us back at second. Then we can look at amending the wording, and then next meeting, I think it would come.
And then we can do
then we
second
can do
reading.
Second reading as
And-
amended
yes,
and
and
third.
third.
And then it would come back to the next meeting to be adopted. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Worship, I think it's probably the best thing to do because you're going to have 2 meetings regardless.
Okay. Okay, so I'll call the question on rescinding third reading. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Now, Councillor Casper, would you like to make the amendment?
Yes, and I move that second reading be amended to include that the fund is to be used for repairs and maintenance of existing sewer infrastructure rather than future expansion.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Loggins has seconded it. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Pearson.
Just the word rather then, right? You use rather?
Rather.
Well, that's what it's in there, but I'd be open to have that being deleted.
Yeah, okay.
You know,
I support it,
if-
but I just
you know,
don't like
you know,
that
if
word
that's the
rather.
case.
What would you rather
What would you
have?
rather say? Well, then,
Other than-
well, if I may,
Here it's coming on the screen here. May be used only for repairs and maintenance to the sewer system as it exists as of this date and not for expansion of the current system.
Perfect.
Is that capturing,
I don't know if we have to include as of this date.
well, the date of the bylaw when it's adopted?
Not.
Then
for-
it's like firm.
Okay, fine.
It's in print.
That's fine. I'll agree with that.
Okay,
I would so move.
so that has,
I'm good.
we've moved and seconded that already. So,
Yep.
okay, I will call the question then on second reading as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. And third reading, anyone?
Seconded?
Move third reading? Is that not correct?
You actually should have been moving third as opposed to going back and amending second because you rescinded third. So you'd be moving a new third with your amendment.
Oh, I see.
Right. You don't need to go all the way back to second.
Right. See, I was thinking that we were amending it at second. Right. Okay, but then, right, okay. Mr. Blackall?
Thanks, Your Worship. My only concern with the, as it exists as of this date, is we may need to repair an item, ongoing, like a centrifuge or the, if we replace a centrifuge with a different type of asset. It has nothing to do with expansion, but it would still need to be done.
So just get rid of that.
Yeah. Yep.
So what's the status procedurally?
Then we've moved and seconded this amendment, so now someone needs to move amending the amendment, right?
So I move that.
Moved by Councillor Casper and seconded by Councillor Pearson. That this is the,
As of this date, be removed.
right? Our corporate officer is,
The first motion would have been, this is to amend the bylaw, and then you're going to move third reading of the bylaw with this amendment.
oh, I see.
Does that make
So
sense?
now procedurally, how do I unwind this?
Technically, the motion you just passed previously on second reading is invalid.
Okay,
So I would move the amendment to the bylaw as written on the screen, and then you would move third reading with that amendment in it.
see what happens when you get sick and you miss a meeting. You totally mess everything up. So, okay, so am I fine then just to have this moved and we don't have to unwind any of the other mess I created? Okay, can someone please move the motion as it's stated? Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Berger. Is everyone clear on what's occurring here? May be used only for repairs and maintenance to the sewer system and not for expansion of the current system. Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. And that's all we need to do on this.
And now you want to move third reading.
Okay. Move third reading by Councillor Casper and seconded by Councillor Loggins. All in favor of third reading? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you very much, everyone, for your patience. Okay, that brings us next to our reports requiring action, 7.1, Community Grant Program Policy. I understand that Council just began this discussion at the last meeting, and you now come back with some recommendations. So I'll turn this over to our corporate officer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not going to go over the whole report because we discussed it a bit in the last meeting. I do want to point out a couple of things to Council that are a little bit different here because I tweaked the policy between the last meeting and this one. One of the things I added was that I said that your grants can be to a maximum of $7,000. But I also put in the provision that if council ever wants to exceed that amount, they can, but they have to do so through unanimous vote of council. So you have the flexibility, but all that means is that council would have to agree if you're going to exceed your own maximum. This is not uncommon for other policies in other jurisdictions. But if you don't like that, we can certainly take it out. I did talk to some councillors offline in the last 2 weeks, and they were in favor of having a maximum. However, that can be removed if you don't like it. Okay. This year's date would be March 15th, as was indicated in the last meeting. So we will have a month between now and the 15th to get any of the grant applications in for this year. We're very confident that we can process those in that time. We're also going to hold 2 evening meetings for the public. Anyone who wants to show up, and we can walk them through the new application form. It's not difficult. It's a fillable PDF, which also meets one of Council's strategic priorities in getting more online forms. So we're starting to upgrade that as well. In here, as was mentioned in the last meeting, there's a 3-year maximum for grant applications, after which the applicants would be required to take a 1-year hiatus, and at any time, council can make any applicant a line item in the budget. The current Category A's are listed in the report. It also shows how much they've received to date and how much they're expecting in the upcoming year. Now, council has 2 options for those organizations listed in the report. You can either approve those as line items in the current upcoming budget year, just for 1 year, and then next year they would all have to reapply, or you can require them all to reapply this year. It's totally up to you, and we can make either one of those work. And then after this year, all applicants, regardless of their past history, would be required to reapply unless you create a line item in your budget. Now, that could be for a certain period of time. It could be in perpetuity, however long you desire. and I'll answer any questions you have.
Councillor Pearson, then Loggins.
Through the chair to you, Mr. Joseph, thank you for the work on this, and I think that you're capturing the essence of what we talked about very well. And the one question I have is about the unanimous vote if we exceed our own maximum. So, my brain goes to $7,100. And it takes a unanimous vote to have that. So why is the word unanimous there as opposed to majority? I guess that's my question.
The reason is that basically when you're looking at exceeding a policy, a majority of vote would generally suffice in any council type of motion. If you're going to exceed a policy, generally you want more than just a majority. Some places use a special majority, which is 2/3. Some places use unanimous. Again, that can be struck. But the idea is that everyone should agree if you're going to exceed your policy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I get the concept. Thank you.
Other comments from councillors? Councillor Loggins and Parkinson. You had your hand up, Councillor Loggins.
I am okay with either of the two options. One thing, though, that would need to be confirmed if all of the organizations above were listed as line items would be if they are all still applying, because I know one organization who isn't this year, not to name any names. So that wouldn't be required and wouldn't be part of the total requested. So if we could, perhaps if we wanted to do number one, confirm with those organizations first. It's a bit of a task to have everyone reapply, I think, but I'm open to that as well, depending on what council is open to.
Councillor Parkinson, then Berger.
I was just wondering what happened with the motion that we had on the floor that all arts would go to an arts committee. That motion was made by Councillor Casper and it was approved by council. So I was wondering what was happening with that.
Through your worship to Councillor Parkinson, because there is no committee, by default, any of your motion would come back to a decision-making body that created it, which would be council.
Councillor Berger.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, and mine might be a bit repetitive. I had similar comments as to Councillor Pearson and Councillor Loggins. But just for my own clarification through you to Mr. Gabriel, the chart that we have here, sorry, Mr. Joseph, are these currently within our 5-year financial plan right now as line items?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay.
Basically, the way your former or current category A's work is that they only come forth if they want to change their funding. So some of these organizations have been receiving money for years, and they're scheduled to receive it again this year. Okay. And that would have been, and Councillor Ray can correct me if I'm wrong in this, but that would have been decided, or they would have had a meeting last fall, and that's what they're scheduled to receive. That's what we have on file.
Response from Councillor Ray.
Yes, thank you, and through your worship to Mr. Joseph. The Category A grants were reviewed in October by the Community Grants Committee of 2015. And at that time, they went to the December meetings. So they haven't been reviewed in the last year, but have gone just in terms of the expectation. So it was October 2015.
That was the, sorry, just to throw in, that was the follow-up part of
okay.
That particular graph, because thinking along the same lines as Councillor Loggins, I know that some of them have changed. And as much as I would like to just say, roll on and we'll go and interview everybody and repeat the process next year, if they're not currently line items within our budget right now, I'd be in favor of having everybody come forward. Just because I think some mandates have changed, and I know some of the people on that table have changed as well.
Yeah, I think for myself, in light of what Councillor Loggins has said, that there is a group not needing the funding, and because of the way the committee structure evolved last fall, I mean, if the grant committee had met and made the recommendation, then it's fine to just endorse it. But perhaps given the change, I think it may be timely, and then just to see what their proposed funding need actually is. Higher, could be lower. Some might have shifted and evolved. It would give us some better information. In doing so, though, will that still meet with your targeted date of the 15th of March?
Oh, I think so, because basically they have a month, because we have the forms already ready to go. We're going to have the website up tomorrow.
Okay.
And I'm planning to have the 2 meetings next week, probably. I'm aiming for Tuesday and Wednesday evening. So that's a month to get an application, and that's more than enough time.
Okay. There are a few groups, I understand, that if they cannot attend the scheduled meetings, they do just want to meet with you, if at all possible, just to get an understanding of the process. I think that might have been stated previously, where groups can meet with staff to have the whole, because the system has changed, just to get complete clarity on what the process is. So I'm hoping that you'd be amenable to meeting with and making some time available.
No, that's not a problem at all. If any group needs to meet with me, they can certainly just get a hold of me.
Yeah, should the evenings, I mean, that's another opportunity, but
Sure.
just should those times conflict.
Yep, no problem at all.
Okay. Councillor Lockins.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, through to staff, I was just wondering what the deadline was going to be. Just to clarify, I heard you say March, and I'm wondering if that's what it was. Because if they, March 15th, was that what it was in previous years as well for Category A?
Councillor Ray?
Category A didn't actually sit as its own, like they just kept rotating every year, and we only did the review in October of 2015. But if somebody wanted to change a Category A, they came to the Community Grants B in April and September. April 30th, I believe, was the date, and September 30th was the date.
Thank you, Councillor Ray. My concern is for several of these organizations who require funding in the summer months, and having the funds actually hit their desk by May or June is not going to work. Probably for, say, some of the arts groups who are doing summer projects. So I think that was one of the good things about the April and September deadline, is that for the groups that could use the funding for the winter, like say the food bank could apply in April. I'm just throwing this out there. I don't know if they actually would or not. But someone like the Community Arts Council might apply in the fall so that they can have that seed funding and use that funding to leverage other grants for the next year so that they're fully prepared for summer, instead of using us as like a last resort crisis situation grant. Which
I know
want to hear those.
Different groups, their year-end varies. Is it possible, a question to our corporate officer then, so everyone meets and applies by the certain date then, that, and let's say council endorses the funding, and then can it be done then that the funding is sent out in July? Does it have to be as soon as it's approved, the checks go out the next day, or can it just be within this year?
No, Your Worship. The idea is that the decision is tied to your budget cycle, so that it's much more transparency in who you're giving money to. When you cut the check, that can be up to the organization. If they don't need it until July, that's not a problem.
Okay.
No, I think what I mean is that those groups would need it for the fall, for the following July. Like, well, not that much, but let's say, like we used to have the September application deadline. And so then by December, January, they would know if they were approved or not.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So if they're...
So then they can plan for their fiscal year, right? Because as you say, the years do vary. So yes, this current system works for our budget cycle, but it would put an organization like the Fine Arts at, a half a year off, if that makes sense. Because if they applied for this summer's event now and received funding in June, and they may not know until May that they're getting the funding, then they're sitting there 2 months before the event not knowing if they can fund a portion of the event.
Your Worship. Councillor Ray,
Okay.
I almost have it.
Yeah. If I may, that has been how it's worked since I've been on council since 2011. So even funding, the funding for the B category, so the capital items, were done in September, and that was for the current year. So people who, organizations that came in September or put their application in, had to use the funding before the end of December. So we didn't do any of the next year applications until April. So that doesn't mean that that process can't be changed. But I'm just saying, but that has been the practice.
So just to confirm, Councillor Ray, so when in previous years, like the district council would have, I think it was 70,000 or something, would be approved to go in the budget, and it wouldn't be named to anyone, it's just that's there, and then that's when the intakes happen at the other times. No. Okay, I'm totally off here.
So when it came to the grants, there was two. It changed during our term, our previous term. And so what happened was we had about 73,000 that was identified as A grants, and they were all listed under there. And they never came back before council but once in all of the years. It's the B grants that started out that was 65,000 that was open for people to apply for the capital. And that's what created the uproar, if I can, when we decided in 2015 to take a look at the all of the applications of the community organizations that were receiving the A grants because it was maxed out. There was no opportunity for anybody to come forward to apply for money in that A group because there was no capacity for it unless we upped that grant. So that's why in October 2015 we had all of the organizations come back to the Community Grants Committee to talk about their A grant. And that was where we were talking, well, as the chair, I put forward that we were looking at trying to create capacity because some of the recipients had been going on indefinitely for more than a decade.
And I think that's where our corporate officer suggested then that those ones that are continuous move to line items, so then the pot is clear now for everyone else. But also to clarify, if someone applied for September and was awarded funds, they could not carry those funds over to a project in the spring or the following year. It had to be spent by the end of December in the year that they applied. You get it in September, you have to spend it by December, submit your report, or return any funds.
Right.
Okay.
But being specific, those were for capital grants.
Okay.
Okay. So a number of these that you see here weren't necessarily about capital.
These aren't capital. These are more...
Yeah. They're more operational. That's a good way.
But some of them are also matching funds to trigger this or that. Okay. Does that, Councillor Luggins?
Well, one more thing to consider as well is that in regards to our application date going forward, is that the Category A grants, unless they were changing what they were applying for, could use, like they knew what they were getting as per the chart here, and they could use that as a line item in their budget. So they never had to guess. So if we change these dates around, and all of a sudden they're starting to have to apply, then we have to be careful about what dates we have as an application date.
Well, that's where our corporate officer said then that also then, instead of having every group reapply, council can just endorse them as line items now.
Yes, but going forward, I mean. Like, I understand how that works for the groups that are on the table here for this year.
Right.
Yeah, but going forward, are they going to be line items the next year, or are they going to have to reapply next year?
But I think we can, as we know and understand their application, and as council goes through the budget process, we would receive that information. So if, that's where if the food bank, just it's at the top here, is saying, look, the 10,000 funds, it's for the milk program, and I'm pretty sure that's what it's for. We need to know that is always going to be in place. Then council can make the determination then this year to put it in the next years of the financial plan as a line item, and then next term that council then will determine if it's going to stay or go.
Okay.
So I think that's where we would have that flexibility, if I'm not mistaken.
Of a recurring line item.
Yes, through the budget process. I mean, I think the intent of having them come back is that so we understand, are these groups still active and valid? For clarity, what are the funds still being used for? Is this still an ongoing thing? I mean, it can even be a question that they put in on their application, like, please consider this as... Corporate Officer, please.
Just two things. To Councillor Logan's, through your worship. The March 15th deadline is just for this year. Going forward, your deadline will be January 15th. It's supposed to be early in the year, so we can do the whole year. And yes, council can pass to make a line item for, the food bank for the next 3 years, for the next 5 years, next 10 years, next 2 years, whatever you like. And then a councillor, can always, choose to change that down the road.
Because a lot of these were line items before, when I got on council, but then that's where they needed to be refreshed, and that's what triggered the grant process to change in the last term anyway. And so that's where it's now it's evolving. Councillor Parkinson?
Through your worship, what were under category B grants? Who was under that one? Like which type of groups? I have no idea. Is that where the Sault Philharmonic Orchestra was? Or
yes, anything that came, Ms. Dominguez got a generator to help with the cats. Sort of those kind of items where they were one-time purchases. We've had Marine Rescue, I believe, at one point came looking for money for a purchase of something.
The tent? Am I not mistaken? There was a tent for the bluegrass?
So that was category B, where it was so it's for one-time purchase.
Yeah, they're one-time capital purchases as a rule.
And then
we bought fridges one time for the food bank. Yeah.
Okay.
Capital.
And then so under category A, then that would be where the Bluegrass Harmony Project, everything will now come under this category A or whatever we're going to call it.
Well,
there's no more categories.
Right. There's whatever you're going to call it. Yeah. Just when everybody comes in for the one time, right? So for the Christmas hamper, that would be the same thing, even though they come in January, but they won't get their check until, it will be approved, but they won't get it till November. Is that what's going to happen with the Christmas hampers then?
That is
It's not on there.
It's not on here, so then they would be under something.
They come every year for that.
The Sault Christmas Bureau? Councillor Ray?
Yes, that would be a category B because it was
Okay.
seen as capital, for the turkeys and stuff.
Oh, I see.
They always came with the application.
I see,
I'm just
okay.
wondering if I just given the conversation, if on the application that there's an opportunity where they can write when they need the check by. So
Yes.
if we're doing it so early in the year, they say, because I think with the food bank for the Christmas hampers, one of the challenges that Ms. Metzger, is just having to wait so long. So if they knew that they could get that check in October, then that would give them more time to negotiate and get things ready for December. So just a thought.
Your Worship, I can check with the finance director on this, but because it's all in one fiscal year, I don't think he's going to be too concerned as to when he has to cut the check. And if it can kind of reflect your conversation, this is part of where some of the confusion has happened in the past between what's a category A and what's a category B. And in some cases, some people have qualified in both categories and don't know what to apply for. So that's what we're trying to simplify through the whole process.
Yeah, this eliminates the categories, and it also allows council to not be restricted, I think, by a certain amount. And then also to have some as the line items, to have them reestablished, perhaps, might be the appropriate word, as line items going forward. But then at least I think we'll all understand what they are. Councillor Loggins, then Parkinson?
So I think that, at least where I'm coming from, the March deadline doesn't work for those who are expecting the funding again. Not that anyone's expecting it, but so I would like to move option one, that we include the organizations above as one-time line items in the 2017 budget, and then just as long as they are actually intending on using the funding. So.
Okay, before you speak to it, can I have is there someone to second it? Seconded by Councillor Parkinson.
Yeah,
okay.
Sorry, that was all one piece. So I'm done. I'm not speaking to it. That was just part of the motion, like making sure that we're not just giving the money away.
Staff just need to know what the motion is, and so that is that council directs staff to include current Category A grant recipients as one-time line items in the 2017 budget.
Discussion.
But is that one-time line items in the budget? Is that what you're moving? Okay.
As long as they want that.
Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship, will the funding that is in the SPA account go over to the grant account now for the arts? Because that, from the spa account, there was $40,000 or something in there. So will that account now be dissolved because there are no arts committees and be moved over to the grants to be used for arts?
I don't think it can be. I mean, that's a fixed, a staff can answer it better, but I mean, that account is set by either policy or by bylaw. It's a certain percentage of building permit revenue.
That's correct.
And so I wouldn't be comfortable losing that. I want that funding to be there for public art. Specifically, that's how, I mean, that through a community process, a public vetted process, democratically it was established in that regard.
So I understand that, but if there's no arts committee or anyone doing anything with the funding, what is going to happen to it?
If I may speak to that, I mean, the whole intent with the committees not being active right now is anything would come forward to committee of the whole. And once we clear our budget round and the like, we can then together work out a proper committee structure going forward. But we right now really need to get the budget done. So I'm not saying that we're never going to have an arts committee. I would like to see that happen, but I want to see other committees also roll, and it didn't make sense to launch one and not the others. And then if we launch the one, we have to look at redoing the whole terms of reference and re-advertising because we don't have adequate membership as it stands. Councillor Berger?
Yes, thank you. And I agree with you. I believe that the SPA committee was done through, it's its own, or that bank account, sorry, has its own sort of regulations with it. But that doesn't hinder anyone from the public that, say, has a public display of art that they're interested in coming to the grant committee, and then this table can say, that's a wonderful idea and it's $15,000. Let's take the funds from the SPA reserve. So I don't think it hinders anybody in the meantime. I mean, I agree with you once we get things rolling and we see where they are, but I still foresee anybody that has a wonderful art project that I still foresee them being able to come forward and ask for grant funding for that, and we can allocate the funds just from the SPA account rather than the grant funding.
And that's where council as a whole would make that determination. So if someone did want to do something, that's how I exactly see it happening. So there is a motion on the table. Discussion on the motion, Councillor Casper?
Well, I was just going to say that I think prior to getting to that stage where decisions are being made from that special SPA account, that a copy of the bylaw comes forward and or the policy that establish the account and how it's to be spent. So there's no ifs, ands, or buts. I just want to, again, speak to the issue of having an organization or a group that has an interest and is directly related to arts to be the decision makers for arts funding. Because I don't think amongst us here that we really have either the interest, the knowledge, or the wherewithal to make that decision. So that's why for, I'll dare to say, 15 years, there was a committee that actually did that. So that's why I was supportive on having all arts-related funding be determined and I guess a responsibility to that group.
Yes, but ultimately council would still need to endorse the decision.
Yes, I
but we're not
understand.
discussing the
No,
committees right now. We're discussing a motion
I know
whether
that.
to make these
So,
one-time line items.
Well, I understand that. And the whole idea was to get away from these line items of continuous funding. Huge danger. Huge. Because unless people, staff, and council now and in the future have the wherewithal to actually take a look at whether or not this funding actually warrants long-time funding. Because that was the problem that we had discovered during the council's last term, was that there were organizations receiving money where they should never have received the money.
Okay, so a question I have back to staff. The deadline to apply is a month from now.
Well, I'm not worried about that now. I just said that I hope that when the decision is made in regard to spending money from the spa account, that matter be dealt with and we package it as a whole. The motion as it stands right now is approval for 1 year.
Yes, this
Not
is
forever.
one-time funding.
Not 3 years, not in perpetuity.
No. This
And-
is one time for 2017 only.
Yes.
And then going forward, the application deadline would be January 15th, 2018.
Yes.
And then if that's the deadline, we'd like to get on the budget earlier. They'll likely have an answer, hopefully.
And so
in due
hopefully,
time.
the motion that was approved by council, which is still in good standing, never been rescinded, whether there's a committee or not, it still is in good standing,
Of course it is.
is going to be dealt with at some future date.
The decision to have arts funding goes to the Arts Committee is in good standing. I would like to see an Arts Committee. I do want to see people on it so they can actually meet. But let's get through the budget because that's a priority. And in the meantime, give me some ideas on how to reestablish that committee. So I want to call the question on this. All those in favor
I would like to make a comment.
about the motion on the floor.
So this motion is, oh, I turned it off, sorry. Thank you. So this motion is for the items that we have that are listed under the category A in our notes. But other groups are able to come forward by this date as well, right? It's not just for these.
This is
So
for
if-
one-time funding for these
So if
groups.
the Sauk Philharmonic wants to come forward, or the Harmonies Project, or Bluegrass, or the Christmas Hamper, they can all come forward by March 15th, correct?
Yeah, through your worship, Councillor Parkinson, yes, that's correct. The motion is specifically to the former category A's listed in the report.
All we're doing is moving the middle motion. It's for these specific ones, and then we can decide on if we accept the rest of the policy, and then that'll trigger, if we do pass that, that'll trigger the application for everyone else. Good? We understand we're voting on. All those in favor? Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, any other questions to staff on the policy, or is anyone prepared to move the first and last paragraphs? You're moving both? Okay, we're moving paragraph 1 and paragraph 3 as presented. Moved by Councillor Casper, seconded by Councillor Loggins. Any discussion or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Send out the press release. March 15th. Thank you very much. That's awesome. Okay, next item, 7.2, remedial action 2364 Church Road. And a welcome to our bylaw enforcement officer. Thank you for joining us this evening.
My pleasure. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This property has been the subject of neighborhood complaints for some time. Obviously, any enforcement action was met with reluctance and digging in heels. So I am asking that Council pass a resolution to allow bylaw enforcement to effect cleanup of the property. Now, having said that, the property owner, in response to my letter of notification of the council meeting tonight, has contacted me and met with me in my office this morning. He is appalled at the condition of his property and assured me of his cooperation and efforts to clean up the property. Regardless of his assurances, I'm still asking for the resolution in the event that his actions fail. He has spoken with, the property owner has spoken with adjacent property owners who he previously had a good relationship with, and they're pleased with his forthcoming and his cleanup plan. Recreational vehicle that's occupied on the property will be removed by the end of the month, and all materials that have been used to add on to that recreational vehicle will be hauled away at that time, and the property should be in compliance by 4 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you very much for attending in your presentation and the photos, because I think that really helps. And I appreciate your efforts in working with this resident. A question I have, not directed to that, but is just, since you're here and we have the policy in front of us, does the policy working with you as you carry out your duties, or being now that it's almost 10 years old, does council need to look at updating this policy in some way? That's kind of you haven't been prepared to answer that question, but I'm just wondering, seeing how it is 10 years old, if we need to look at post-budget discussing it further. Or is it great?
The policy is quite effective. As all policies that are dated, there could be a little update, but as it sits, it's very explanative of what the conditions to meet unsightly are, and that's very helpful when explaining to property owners. So it doesn't need a major overhaul by any means, just a little updating.
Okay, so perhaps we can look at bringing it forward to council later. It's not an immediate thing, but just something to think about, just to have it current. There's no immediacy for this, though. Councillor Pearson, then Parkinson.
Through the chair, or through your worship, to our bylaw enforcement officer. Thank you. I know you've got a tough job out there, and I guess I have two questions. Why the need to come to council if the policy is strong enough? Why do you have to come to council tonight to ask for a motion for us to endorse it? And second of all, you've got some indication from this property owner that they're going to clean it up. So I've got a two-part question. The second part is, I'm prepared to make the motion to support you. I mean, you've got a tough job. But should we put it, if it's not done within a week or something like that? Because again, you know, if you force their hand, they've come and met with you today. Just wanted to hear your opinion whether we should say, okay, by March 1st, if this is not done, this motion is in effect. So that gives two good foot going forward. I don't know. I'm just kind of thinking out loud. Okay? Through the chair to those questions.
Through your worship, to Councillor Pearson, why I'm asking for the resolution to be passed tonight is, as in all circumstances where it affects property owners, the condition of unsightly is very kind of all-consuming to neighboring residents, and it becomes more of an issue than perhaps, you know, if we look at it subjectively. Enough time has lapsed that we've been dealing with these property owners. Sure, he's offered me his assurance. I don't know him from Adam. He lives in Alberta. He's got a family member in the house. What I'm trying to prevent is a huge time lapse in going back to inspect the properties, starting my letter writing campaign over again, and then coming back to council. It's just time effective, if you will. And why the policy does not grant me the authority to pass or to enact on my own a cleanup of a property. The community charter specifically outlines how that process is to happen. In the unsightly premises bylaw, section 4, it says that the matter will be brought to council and council makes a resolution.
Councillor Parkinson.
I would like to move the recommendation, and I would like to attach a date to that as well so that it is completed, so that should they not go forward and do as requested.
Can we have why don't you move the motion with your date, and then we can get it seconded.
So that council directs staff to take remedial action regarding unsightly premises at 2364 Church Road to ensure compliance with bylaw number 296, unsightly premises and objectionable situations bylaw 2007, to be completed by, I was going to say the end of March, 30th of March. That gives them just over a month.
Okay, is there a seconder?
And look at it.
2017.
Yes, 2017. Oh, I said 2000 because of the bylaw there.
Okay.
That's the number of it.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Loggins. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Pearson and Berger.
In my discussion and my question, that's not kind of where I was going. I was hoping that they would have actions and that you could start your actions, right? This motion doesn't say that, right?
As I understand it, though, this motion enables our bylaw enforcement to do what she needs to do. And then what Councillor Parkinson wanted to do is to ensure that they're, oh, I see, is not if action is not taken.
Yes.
That's not as Councillor Parkinson stated.
Okay.
No.
See, now I'm hearing this differently. So what I'm seeing now
I
is
just read
that
it
no
from me.
action would be taken.
Till March 30th.
Yeah.
No, it has to be completed by the end of March.
Yeah,
The
and
cleanup.
what I understand Councillor Parkinson to mean was that
I was
the
reading
property
what-
would be cleaned up by
Yeah,
March.
That's correct.
Right, okay, so if action is not taken, whereas here, the action won't start unless it's
Completed
different.
by.
Okay, no, that's not,
I wanted the end of February.
yeah, to our corporate officer.
Did I say it?
Your Worship, if I may, I think for clarity for staff, they should know the date at which they want to start to action or to take action on a particular property, rather than when they need it to be completed. That way you can tell the owner you have until this date, otherwise we will step in and take care of it for you.
Okay, so in that case, then it should be a lot sooner, right?
Whatever you
So there would be you could put in a start and end date to our CEO.
Whose motion is this? Sorry.
Councillor Parkinson moved it. And you seconded it.
Motion that we moved and seconded.
You moved it and then a date was added. Okay, that councillor to ensure compliance. You know what? What's written on the page?
I read what was written on the page.
And then you added the date.
That's
Okay,
correct.
there's something different here. What's on the paper is that council directs staff to take remedial action regarding unsightly premises at 2364 Church Road to ensure compliance with the bylaw number 296 unsightly premises by 2007.
And to be completed by March 30th. The motion.
Whereas there it says
Is not completed.
there's
by.
if action is not taken by the property owner.
Completed by.
So that's where it differs a bit.
Yeah. I want it to be done by that date.
Okay. To our CEO.
Yes, Your Worship. I just want to refer back to our bylaw enforcement officer's comments that the property owner has agreed to have it cleaned up by the end of February, not the end of March. And so if you want to give her a little bit of teeth to get this done by the end of February, we should say the end of February in this resolution.
Sure.
Okay, so then it would be, see, I heard it different from what I saw. What I thought that Councillor Parkinson's intention was that this is cleaned up by the end of March. The action doesn't start at the end of the March. Is that correct?
Correct. It's got to
Okay.
be completed.
Okay. So if action is not taken by the property owner by February 28th,
Is this an amendment?
well, now we're looking at amending the motion.
But it should be cleanup. Not
Yeah.
action taken. Like cleanup completed.
Get the if not out of there. Properties to be cleaned out by February 28th.
And it's not if action.
It's the not that's throwing me off,
It's
actually.
if action is not taken.
The if and the not. Regarding unsightly.
No action by February 28th.
All right, that count, okay. Well, I can call the question and defeat it.
Your Worship, if council would like to give me direction, I'm more than willing to
Okay,
fix whatever
so
you'd like on here.
can I just I'm just going to call the question on what's on the floor just to clear it out of the way. That's the one with the March 31st date in it. I want to clear it.
We have a motion on the floor.
Well, I can call the question on it, and then you can vote no, and then we can move a different motion, rather than amending, back, right? Well, then we have to, because it's been moved and seconded, that's why I just want to have it defeated, and then we can have it cleaned up. Okay, so I'll call the question with the March 31st trigger date. All those in favor? Opposed? All opposed? Or actually, no? Otherwise, it's going to stand. Okay, so that means Councillor Berger, Ray, Pearson, the mayor, and Councillor Casper have defeated the motion. Now we can... No, it's easier to just... Oh, God. Okay, Councillor Pearson.
So I make a motion that council direct staff to take remedial action regarding unsightly promises at 2364 Church Road to ensure compliance with our bylaw 296, unsightly premises and objectional situations bylaw dated 2007, I guess is the date of the bylaw, and that this action take place.
Do you want to start with what was posted? No. You could always write it out and give it to our corporate officer. We're on email. You could email them too. Just some suggestions.
To be completed by February, to the satisfaction of the bylaw enforcement officer by February 28, 2017. So she can start.
Your Worship, if I may, the challenge I have with putting a date as to when two parties have to get together to comply with a bylaw, then what date do we step in?
Mine is March 1st. To the satisfaction, if it hasn't been cleaned up, to the satisfaction of the bylaw enforcement by February 28th, she could take the remedial action.
So would I be fair in saying that this motion with February 28th changed to March 1st?
Yes. Completed by. So the remedial action can take place. Commence. I can't read it. Give Mr. Joseph. Comfortable with that?
Councillor Pearson, is that
Yep.
your full intention?
Yes.
Do we have a seconder for the motion that's posted that council directs staff to take remedial action regarding unsightly premises at 2364 if remedial action is not taken by the property owner by March 1st, 2017 to comply with the bylaw as stated?
That doesn't mean that.
Is there a seconder for this motion? Councillor Ray has seconded the motion. Speaking to it, Councillor Parkinson.
So if remedial action is not taken, that doesn't mean that it has to be completed by that date. That means they just have to start working on it, correct? That's how I read it.
Remedial action is not taken to the satisfaction of the bylaw enforcement officer.
But that means it doesn't have to be completed by March 1st.
No.
It can mean that he just starts it and carries on and he's doing whatever
Remedial
he's
action
doing.
is not taken.
It should be,
And completed.
it should be if remedial action is not completed
Yep,
by,
I'm comfortable with that.
then you know what has to be.
Is the mover and seconder okay with this amendment?
Yes.
Councillor Ray? Okay, so if remedial is not completed by the property owner by March 1st. Okay? Anything else?
Okay.
Councillor Pearson?
Just one question. Through the chair, through your worship, to the bylaw enforcement officer, are you okay? There. I just want to make sure before you get that. I'm supporting you in this in your quest. It just gives them a little bit of time because they put their best foot forward. So March 1st to your satisfaction. That's what I'm proposing.
That's totally fine. Just a comment from bylaw perspective in enforcing the unsightly premises bylaw. A date isn't required in the resolution because the resolution, and I'm not asking you to change it. It's done. Yeah, far be it from me. A date isn't required because I'm already working with the property owner and had, for example, had his assurances. So when those assurance dates come along and he fails, I've got the resolution in my hand, and that would be enforced immediately. So, just for future, if that helps clarify anything.
I'm thinking thinking about him having the leverage to the chair. I'm thinking about him having leverage to his tenant. He said, "Look, listen, I've got to get this done by March 1st, or they're going to take action." So that conversation is going to take place there, because you're talking about a third party in this case. That's kind of where I'm going. That's where I was aiming with this. Okay, thank you.
Okay, everyone's good? All those in favor? Oppose? It's carried unanimously. Great. Okay. 7.3, consent request, CRD bylaw 4142, Regional Parks Loan Authorization bylaw. One thing I'd like to say is that putting in the rail trail goes alongside. It's not to replace the tracks in that corridor. The whole island corridor is an ongoing discussion that's occurring. Various mayors are meeting with the Bayview developer to look at finding a way to make the business case for commuter rail possible, and crossings and the like have been funded through the CRD to ensure that if rail becomes a reality, that's in place. This is a trail that runs alongside so that residents could actually, from the West Shore, get into the core rather quickly. I don't see it as replacing one or the other. Questions from councillors? Councillor Berger, then Pearson.
Yes, thank you. Initially, when I read this and I looked at the map, the first thing that came to mind was that this was a lot of money for a trail, and not to mention the loss of potential rail right-of-way. I understand what you're saying about how they're supposed to be working together. I would just rather see the rail idea come first, and then once they know exactly the specifications that rail could possibly use, if there's enough right-of-way left, then absolutely create a trail. But for me, I can't support it. I don't see us creating a trail while we still have the major congestion we have, without knowing the exact specifications that light rail would need. For me, light rail on the ENN trail is far more important than a walking connecting trail that they have proposed, or a cycling trail.
Councillor Pearson?
Well, capture exactly what Councillor Berger said, is that at the bottom of the money pit is continual borrowing, and the CRD comes to us all the time for endorsements of this borrowing. And one thing leads to another, to another, to another, and it's constant borrowing. And I think given, what some of our other local municipalities are saying about the CRD itself, there's got to be a total review of everything that they're doing. So I'm not going to support this.
Other members of council? Councillor Casper?
Well, I had the opportunity to serve on the Parks Committee. I do appreciate the need for certain parts of the region to have bike pedestrian trails. But I'm going to agree with what Councillor Berger and what Councillor Pearson had stated, is that I think the CRD should get a handle on what in fact is going to happen with that right-of-way. This right-of-way is not an asset that the CRD would own. So yes, there may be a lease with the society that's looking after the ENN right-of-way, but it's still not theirs. And I'm just a little reluctant. And I'm not going to say it to be vindictive, but I'm thinking to myself, why would we support this on something that's going to benefit View Royal, when View Royal was one of the municipalities that turned down the right of people to have access to water in the regional growth strategy? So I think to myself, you know what? I'm a regional thinker, but at the same time, when a community like that comes forward and, through the regional district is pushing for this, then I'm thinking, why aren't you pushing for rights of other people? But I'm not using that as my reason. But I will tell you this, it's in the back of my mind, I'll tell you that right now. So at this point in time, I can't support the bylaw.
Any other Councillor Parkinson?
Through your worship, I was just wondering what the cost would be to Souk to have this put in.
51 cents per
Yeah, 51 cents
Time
per
that-
100.
times that for me.
However,
Depends on the assessment of your home.
Right. That
So-
that doesn't mean anything to me.
51 cents per 100.
How much?
$2?
20 bucks?
20 bucks?
That's cheap beer.
Well, it depends on how you pour it, into what sort of, anyway.
On how much of a house, Fred?
20 bucks on a 4.
So say $20. Further comments, Councillor Parkinson? No? Okay. Councillor Loggins?
I might as well jump in on the disapproval party. I also disapprove of this for the exact reasons. I think that it would be very important to strategize for light rail and put our money towards that instead.
No, and I agree with you. I think it's just that there's parts of the trail have already been completed. But I appreciate Councillor Berger's perspective. The light rail would move many people into the core, including residents from Souk. So it would be nice to get that up and running. For myself, it's more that we approved through the Mayor of Colwood a service review of the CRD, and it would be interesting to see where that ends up as we look at supporting other regional matters.
Move receipt.
Well, we have to advise. We need to vote. There is a recommendation to approve the that's the wrong. The motion would be that council does not consent to the adoption of this bylaw. As you see it presented, it's here. What the CRD is requesting is that council consent to the adoption of bylaw 4142, Regional Parks Loan Authorization in accordance with 346, and that council directs staff to notify the council CRDs of that council's decision. So in this case, the motion then that I would look for is that council does not consent. Deny consent. Moved by Councillor Berger, seconded by Councillor Loggins. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. Okay. Next one is the Mayor's Caucus. That's occurring next week in Oak Bay. This has been a new initiative. It started, I think, 2 years ago, and the caucus moves around the province of BC. There's also pre-conference gatherings, so the AVICC has one for island mayors, and the UBCM has one for all BC mayors. It's sort of 2 times a year, and then there's another one that's held in the spring. I think it was in Fort St. John last year. In this case, though, the UBCM executive is meeting that exact same time, so I plan to only attend the caucus on one day, both to represent Souk and also to represent the UBCM executive, in which case my fees would be $60 plus applicable taxes.
I'll move the recommended action.
So moved by Councillor Pearson and seconded by Councillor Ray. I've already submitted my fees. They just haven't cashed my check. So in this case, I guess the district would reimburse me. So thank you. I'll report back. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. It seems weird, though. A question to our corporate officer. Like, I'm voting for me to attend something, but I guess that's just, you did the same, right? It's just the way it is. Okay. It's just odd. Budget transfers report 7.5. There's a report here from staff. Does our finance director have anything to add?
Thank you, Your Worship. This is just to, so everyone's okay with this report, is these are transfers within existing lines in the very detailed document that supports the bylaw. Okay, so, and we've confirmed with legal counsel that this is okay to do without having to amend the bylaw. We're not changing any of it doesn't impact any of the lines in the financial plan part that is part of the bylaw. Schedule A or Schedule 1 to the bylaw itself does not change. But we do need to address some items ideally before the actual 2017 to 2021 plan gets approved. So the first one being the OCP, of course, is still going on, and right now the current 2017 year of the amended 2016 to 2020 financial plan only has a line for long-term plans instead of OCP, so really we're just shifting it. Then the other one being our contract with the RCMP has accommodation costs included in that. We pay 100% of the accommodation costs, not 70%. We pay, so anything to do with their furniture and equipment, and that's what that other one is for. So that would be getting rid. We do have that chamber agreement that was terminated, so those funds are still sitting in there. They're not going to be used, obviously, so that could fund that. And then we do have work. I don't know if you're aware, downstairs, you've probably seen it, the shape that the front area is in, and the washrooms are needing some serious attention, and the janitor's closet as well. So those would be when we call someone in to remediate them. So that's the line that we use, is that other outside services. So that taking the Chamber of Commerce, what would have been a grant to them in 2017, and using it for those two items. And then also we had a savings in the records management budget that is in there for the 2017 year, because we've traditionally included summer students in there, and we haven't needed to use them because of our internal resources we have now. So that amount also going into the other outside services to fund the costs of bringing someone in to do those repairs. And then within the policing budget, there's a crime reduction amount of $1,300 that isn't needed. It hasn't been spent in the last couple of years. And that could go to relief worker remuneration for the fire department volunteers, which would allow for costs for counseling services. So right now they don't have any employee assistance benefits. We have got that in place now for them, but it isn't in the budget. But this would allow it to go into that area where they get paid out of. So, and it is fine to pay that as salaries and benefits out of there. So.
Okay. Question I have is, I'll go to Councillor Loggins, because now I didn't write it down, and it's with the policing. Like in the past, how did we handle the RCMP payments if the budget had not been adopted, and in the first quarter or whatever of the year, then how were we able to make those payments? I don't know if these sorts of transfers had come forward, or maybe they, yeah.
Yes, Your Worship. The plan we have in place, we already have a 2017 budget right now. And really, if we had to, we live with that one, because it's an approval of a 5-year plan.
Oh, I see. So because there's a 5-year plan in place already that's covering off future years, then that enables you to make those payments even with the 2018 adoption not occurring.
That's correct.
So things like your hydro, I mean, the town still needs to run until the budget's adopted. You can still do that. But in this case, if that's the case, then why is there a need to?
This is a new, the budget that we have for 2017 for the RCMP contract doesn't include these amounts in its accommodation portion of that budget, and it's a request that we have had that they need this additional equipment, that's all. And either we allow for it now or we bring it forward in whenever the budget gets approved, the real 2017 budget.
I see. Okay, Councillor Loggins and Pearson.
Yeah, I just quickly wanted to thank staff for this report. It was very great. It was comprehensive. I didn't have any questions come out of it, and it helps us tie up some loose ends, so thank you.
Councillor Pearson. I think the one point I'll make about the washrooms and the janitor's closet is that's where the odors have been traced to, and there's black mold in those areas. So it's a health and safety matter for both staff and visitors.
I don't have an issue with doing that. It just seems like
no, I
that's
hear what you're saying.
The wrong money to be using for that. It should be other money. That's I guess it seems like it's incongruent with where that money is or what we have. That's I guess my opinion.
To our finance director.
Yep, through your worship, to Councillor Pearson. I went through it very carefully to see what we could give up to cover these costs, and these are really the only items right now that we have for sure that we're not going to need. And definitely when we bring forward the 2017 budget, we're going to be looking at some other areas as well.
Councillor Casper.
I'm not going to support this blanket-wise because we have not had discussion around our budget. These types of one-offs tie our hands for future deliberations and how we may want to earmark these dollars. The contract that we had with the Chamber of Commerce for economic development purposes, that's why it was established, $280,000 was paid to that group for 10 years. They decided to cancel the contract. My mind works this way. Then we should earmark that money for why it was originally intended in the first place. We established business license fees a number of years ago to earmark economic development. That was the purpose. And I'm never going to stray away from that story. And we either earmark the money for that purpose or we give people a break. If you're not going to spend it for that purpose, then give them a break. I don't support having a contract for the OCP. We have 3 planners on staff. I will never, ever support another contractor coming to work to have something to do with our OCP. And, you know, I can only account for $6,000 of what we'd allocated for contracting with the OCP from a check that I signed a few weeks ago for some students that operate out of Vancouver Island University. And if we'd earmarked $20,000 in 2016, where did the other 16 go? Was that spent? Well, if that wasn't spent, that rolled automatically somewhere. And so, you know, I just don't support hiring another contractor. I'm not opposed to funding an opportunity to do something with the RCMP if it's required. But my question is, what is the invoice amount? Are we paying the entire cost? Because as the staff sergeant came and told us that 4 officers are paid for by the province of British Columbia. My mind works this way. 25% of the cost should be borne by the province and not by the municipality alone. And I don't know what the funding breakdown is or the cost allocation for this capital item. Because I hate like heck seeing that, that we get the entire bill dumped on us, if that's the case. And I'll use a case in point. The civilian position that we agreed to fund, the first approach on that was the municipality was going to pay 100% of the cost. Well, I raised the alarm bells. Why should we pay 100% of that cost when the service is being utilized by the provincial portion of the contract? So I'm assuming, maybe rightly or wrongly, that this equipment is going to be used by those other staff persons. So is the province picking up their share? There is no invoice attached to this, so I don't know what the breakdown is from the RCMP people. And I would have hoped that when the finance people were going to be coming at the last meeting that we canceled, that these are the kind of questions we could have asked. The other thing that I'm concerned about is if we have staff on hand, additional staff on hand, then why are we going to be paying for these other services? You know, the records management. Are we going to pay for records management?
Through your worship,
yes.
We do have records management costs for sure.
Right.
We don't have what was in the budget a year ago when we set it. We thought we may need to get some students. We didn't need them. So when you see the 2017 budget, it's not going to be that amount that it was before. So what I'm saying is there's a savings there, and that could be used. You don't have to approve any of these. It just means we can't do anything until the 2017 budget is approved regarding these items, because they currently aren't in the plan, and we'll get down to that situation where you had before. Like, for example, if you want to see invoices for the chairs, it's too late. We're already going to get invoice for that, and then it's not in the plan, and now you're leaving me in a bad spot.
Well, I know, but I'm not trying to leave you in a bad spot. The point is that, you know, are we picking up 100% of the cost when 25% of the detachment is utilized by the provincial component and not just the municipal component?
Through your worship, we do pay 100% of all the accommodation-related costs. So anything to do with the building and the fixtures in the building, we are billed 100% of those costs.
Well, I would dare say that we should actually go back to the province, because there is actually a procedure under the contract provisions for us to actually dispute any bills, any things that we are required to pay. And they actually have a clearly defined process. So, you know, I'm not blaming you. Don't get me wrong.
What we could do there is that the district is in a 21-year agreement with the RCMP
I understand that, but
was
I'm
signed.
talking about the mechanism that's contained in the contract. That if there's a dispute, there's a dispute resolution process on dealing with expenditures. You know, I look at it, fair is fair. I'm not blaming staff. I appreciate all the work the staff has done. But you know what? I don't like one-offs. I don't like seeing my hands tied as a councillor on future budget deliberations on decisions that are being made now. And I'm sure our Director of Finance knows that, he appreciates that, because he's seen the workings of the municipality.
And through your worship, I get that, and this isn't, don't skin off my nose. These are just things if we you know, wanted to get some things done. For example, I can't pay any OCP costs other than internal right now.
Yeah.
That's just the way this has to work, right? If you want me paying those, they're sitting on my desk until we do a budget amendment, if we want to go through all that again. Anyway, regarding the RCMP costs, we do use, they are very helpful in dealing with us, and the people that you're going to meet next week are very helpful. And we do send stuff back to them saying, hey, this doesn't look right, that doesn't look right. And they do fix stuff. So, yeah.
So it's something that could be fixed.
I don't think we can change the fact that accommodation is 100% paid versus per capita costs are 70% paid. Yeah. That's in the master agreement between the province and the federal government. So.
Right, but there is a provision for, because we're a party to it, we sign it.
My only point in raising that contract is that not everyone here has seen it. So perhaps when the group does return to see us, we could be provided with the contract so that when you're referring to a specific clause, we all know exactly, we understand where you're coming from. Because when councillors do reference outside documents, it's nobody here, it's not that we doubt you, but others may want to make their own conclusions. So that's where I jumped in, was trying to add that. Anything else to add, Councillor Casper? No. Other questions? Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think what I'm hearing from our Director of Finance is that unless we are willing to do an amended budget for 2017, this provides the alternative so that we can get the bathrooms done and address some bills on the table. If you know, I would prefer to see the bathrooms and the janitor closet. I think that's a health and safety issue. So I'm wondering if it might be possible, Your Worship, if we could go through the recommendations one at a time, because there may be support for one and not another.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely, there's 4 different recommendations put forward by staff, but council can ultimately decide what they wish to do. You can move them as a block, you can move them individually, you can move something entirely different. To our CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to provide a point of clarification with respect to the $20,000 for the official community plan. That doesn't include a contractor that was hired like we did last time. This includes all the community consultations that we've been doing, coffee and tea, open houses, you know, staff overtime and being there in the evenings and that sort of thing. So it's definitely not what I think Councillor Casper is thinking about. I would never ask the District of Sault to ever go down that road again.
Councillor Parkinson?
But that was one of my questions, is why do we need a consultant? Because it states in our notes here that it says that we may need to engage the services of a consultant during the time frame anticipated to complete the OCP. So that's why I wasn't going to agree with that one.
So that was my oversight, and I apologize for that.
Okay, so to council, would someone like to move a motion? Councillor Loggins is moving the first one about the long-term plans, transfer the 2017 budget for long-term plans to the OCP line item. Is there a seconded by Councillor Ray? Discussion, Councillor Parkinson, then Casper.
And so that line to engage the services of a consultant will be removed? Thank you.
Councillor Casper?
Okay, I want to thank our CIO for that clarification.
Anything further on this? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. Next item regarding council authorized staff to transfer the 2017 budget for the Chamber of Commerce to the budget for the contract with the RCMP and the budget for other outside services. So moved by Councillor Loggins, seconded by Councillor Ray. Councillor Pearson, then Casper.
Just through your worship to Director of Finance, where did that $5,000 come from for the Santa Claus parade? No, that's the 2016 budget, sorry. Okay, I got it. Sorry, I was not doing the math. I'll support this recommendation, but when we get to budget deliberations, to Councillor Casper's earlier point, I think that $28,000 has to be identified somewhere in our budget deliberations, that was available for economic development, and I'd like to see that. To support this, I don't know how you'd add that to this as a motion, but I'd like to see it continue on for in our 2017 budget. Somewhere else. I don't know. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense because it was for economic development, and we contracted with the chamber for them to carry out those services, and then they listed off what they were going to do, and then they had terminated the agreement, which left us engaging the Lions Club and the like last year. But because the budget has it in there, that's why it's there, and we're transferring that. But in the case of the Lions, I believe a new line item was created at the last council meeting that I wasn't here about events or something for this coming year.
But the pot's going to have to be drained somewhere else, right? Like to balance.
Right. So in this case, you could still direct to staff then that instead of Chamber of Commerce service agreement, it could just read economic development, and then we could deliberate on it that way and just leave it because the intent was economic development.
Right. But
there may be another group putting it forward. Go ahead.
So through the chair to the other councillors, I just don't want this. My point is I don't want this to get lost. Yeah. You know, it's once it's gone, and then the intent of that, you know, it becomes difficult in budget deliberations somewhere else. We don't have any other money to bring this from another place so we could pay for this for these two items? Because I mean we have to get these paid for.
Through your worship.
Sorry.
Not easy money, if you know what I mean. Like right now, this is one that's sitting there. We've already, I think you're going to hear from the CAO at some point on her State of the Union, and you're going to hear some other things, your strategic plan, for example, how these things are going to roll into the new budget, and you're going to you're going to see some of those items in the new budget. But overall, there will need to then be it come from somewhere else. It can only come from really one place, as you said.
That's
so,
right. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll support the motion.
Councillor Casper, then Parkinson.
If I may, through your worship, when you see the 2017 budget, is going to have a lot of other costs in there, because not only is there the additional member that was already in the budget, there's quite a significant ask for retro pay covered. So that is going to add quite a bit to that budget, actually. I don't know when it's going to get paid. If it's going to get paid, it sounds like they are saying it's going to get settled and paid this year. So they're asking us to budget for it. So I've got that in the 2017 budget that you'll see when we bring that forward. So I wouldn't say there's a savings in that area at all for this year.
So after hearing that, I'm sure you can appreciate my comments and concerns about the fact that in your interests and in council's interests, the sooner we deliberate our budget and make some decisions, then we don't have to do this. And, you know, I haven't seen the strategic plan. I don't know of council even approving the strategic plan to date. So, you know, I hope that we bear in mind that, still subject to council's approval of a strategic plan that may or may not have cost implications. You know, because that's the first thing. Second thing is then you decide what kind of tax increase do you want. I'm still operating under the basis that it's no more than 2%, period. That's me. Because inflation is less than that. And I'm, you know, really, I have to forewarn everybody. I'm going to be reluctant to support anything beyond that.
We appreciate that, Councillor Casper, but we've moved completely away from the motion. Yeah. So Councillor Parkinson, did you have something to add about the motion? No. Okay, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. The next one. Moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Loggins. Other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. And finally, there's the last one regarding the moved by Councillor Ray and seconded by Councillor Loggins. Moved as presented. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously. I think where council is sitting, and certainly where I am, is that we do feel that it's, even though it's February, it feels late. So it would be great once we get through the next series of meetings that we start the budget process like in November, so that we know, and then staff is set up right from January 1st, from the get-go for the year. We're not doing amendments, we're not doing transfers, and we're just on the ball getting things done. Because the problem when you adopt by May, you know, if you want to do stuff, people are engaged with other work, and then we end up not accomplishing things. So I think around the table there's a desire to get work done in our community.
Thanks, Your Worship, and I think our CAO may have something to add to this, but I just want to say we can do the budget anytime. If we're going to show actuals for the year before, we're not even finished the year end as we stand right now. So that's why I think traditionally it's been so long and late in the process. If we didn't have to worry about accurate budget to actual numbers for the previous fiscal year, we can certainly forecast what we think they're going to be. But that's the only problem I see with doing a budget earlier.
No, and I get that, but if we at least started it, then at least you have a sense where council is sitting strategically in terms of what objectives in the strategic plan they want to see unfold, what sort of emerging issues came about that were unanticipated.
and so forth. And then once you finish the actuals, then we can equalize it out. But it's still a new year. To our CAO.
Thank you, Your Worship. To Mayor and Council, I did have a conversation with our Director of Finance. I believe it was yesterday. Yeah, well, no, it was last week, sorry. Yesterday was Monday. And had a conversation with respect to starting the budget deliberations much earlier than this year so that we are locked and loaded to go by the end of December. And we do think that's doable. The only caveat, of course, is the budget to actuals that will have to be reconciled through our audit process in the new year. So it is certainly a goal of this leadership team to make sure that we do address those concerns.
Great. Okay. One brief comment?
Yes, very briefly. Well, then, what other jurisdictions do is they pass a provisional budget in December, and then that gives direction, and it gives a ballpark figure. So at least it's been worked up. Then, in order to take into account the actuals, which could then determine whatever surpluses are left, then during a January-February process, you can do your final budget.
Okay. Okay, so our next item is 7.6, Morwenna Holdings. We have a report as presented. Anything further from staff? Any questions from council? Moved by Councillor Logan, seconded by Councillor Ray. Councillor Pearson, comment? Question?
Okay. So, contract was good till January 31st, or through your worship to the CAO. So this contract was good till January 31st, and it's February 14th. So we've got a 2-week sort of holdover here that hasn't been approved. The second part of this is that I don't recall the conversation that we were going to employ him after the new fire chief was here. I understand kind of the background from this report, but maybe you can help me with that.
To our CAO?
Yes, the carryover work with respect to Morwenna Holdings has to do with bargaining, and we had thought that we might be finished with bargaining earlier than what we will be finished with bargaining. So, and I can provide a further update when we're in camera with respect to where we're at with the bargaining. But we thought things would be kind of locked and loaded before now, and they're not. The other thing that Morwenna Holdings is assisting our new fire chief with is the budget, because he's so new. And Morwenna Holdings has been working diligently with our Director of Finance to create a budget for 2017 and moving forward. So those are the two pieces of work that he's continuing to assist the district with.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Pearson? Councillor Parkinson?
I was just, through you, Your Worship, it states that council directs staff to pay invoices submitted. What is the total of those invoices that have been submitted? Oh, I didn't see it. Right, but is that what's already submitted? Because it says to pay invoices already submitted. So is the 10,000 what he's getting paid now, and then we're going to pay him till the end of March? So I'm asking what the total amount is.
Through your worship to Councillor Parkinson, we haven't we hadn't received invoices totaling that much, but that's a likely maximum amount, I think, based on our projection of how the negotiations timeline may go.
So his invoices would be for the 10,000, and then we'll be paying him additionally until the end of March.
Through your worship, no, that would be total for till the end of March, if even needed, really.
So 10,000 total till the end of March, maybe less. Okay. To our CAO, then Casper.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's difficult to anticipate what the costs are going to be because he bills on an hourly basis, and we really don't know what this next round of bargaining is going to look like. So as the Director of Finance stated earlier, we think it's going to be no more than 10,000 till the end of March. But if we see things shifting, we may need to come back to council.
Councillor Casper?
Are there any other contracts or services engaged assisting the district in regard to bargaining? There's no other individuals.
Yes, we do have one other individual, Kevin Ramsey, is assisting us with bargaining as well.
So how much is that costing us? You know, because the way it's adding up right now, you know, we could be spending a fortune just in who's representing us, what it's costing there, and what we're ending up potentially going to be paying. And I'm not advocating bargaining in public, don't get me wrong. But you know what? I'm at the point right now saying, stop it. We're not going to bargain anymore. Give it a rest. You know, I'm prepared to do that because I can just see money going down the proverbial money hole. And, you know, and it's no disrespect, please. I'm not being critical. I'm just concerned about the amount of money that we're shelling out for additional services over and above what we're already paying. And to me, like that wasn't part of the equation. Honestly, I just, you know, we were first approached, this was a short-term contract. Then was there not an extension granted? Yes.
Yes.
So this is now, you know, the third extension. And so I'm just concerned about that. And, you know, you don't have a crystal ball, and I appreciate that. I don't have a crystal ball. But I'm thinking, when you start adding it up, maybe you would have been better off cutting a deal. And I don't know the details.
Okay, we have our corporate officer, our CAO, and Councillor Loggins.
Thank you, Your Worship. As a corporate officer, I need to caution you if you're going to discuss anything about bargaining that needs to happen in camera. As a member of the district's bargaining team, I'm more than willing to discuss this matter with you in camera, but these discussions cannot be held in public.
Is it possible to defer this until we have more information?
Yeah, you can defer this.
With the exception
with our CAO.
Thank you. One point I would like to remind Mayor and Council of is the previous bargaining team and the result of the contract that you got from them. We have hired professionals who understand the fire services, who have had tons of experience negotiating, and if Mayor and Council wants us to walk away from the table and live with another contract that does not meet the needs of the employer, then we're more than happy to do so. But the upfront costs of negotiating, A, in good faith, and B, with a team who knows what they're doing, is going to save the district over time. And so it might seem like a lot right now, but you can't, you know, we are being as responsible as we can as a management team here to get the best deal for the district in the long run. And we can't forget that.
Councillor Loggins and Pearson.
I hear what people are saying around the table, and I do feel a bit the same about it, but I also understand where our management team is coming from, which is why I moved this. I'm not sure if it's okay as is, or if council would prefer that we amend the motion to say to a maximum of 10,000.
Would you like to make that amendment?
I'll make the amendment. We can vote on that.
Yeah. Is anyone seconding the amendment? Seconded by Councillor Parkinson. On the amendment, then, is Council comfortable with the $10,000 maximum? We'll call the question on that. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed? And then there's the main motion. Councillor Pearson, did you have a comment?
No, I think I'm comfortable now with the 10,000 to the end of.
Okay. Yeah, there's a date in there to the end of March, and there's a maximum in there, and we know where it's coming from. Councillor Berger.
Yes, thank you. Through you to Mr. Blackwell. Within our 5-year plan, do we have any provisions of funds set aside for bargaining?
Through your worship to Councillor Berger, I don't believe so. I think council contingency and CAO contingency would be where funds would be sort of estimated and put aside. But ideally then there's also a line in the budget for strategic planning or negotiating costs so that we could do transfers instead of doing amendments, that kind of thing. So.
Okay. And then just, sorry, again, further to you, to second that up, would it be appropriate then, when we know, like say within our next 5-year budget cycle, would it be appropriate to be proactive and have funds set aside that are strictly for bargaining so we don't find ourselves in this situation? What troubled me about this, and again, I can appreciate what everybody has said here, but what troubled me is that it's coming through council contingency, which is going to leave us with $18,000 for the rest of the year, and we're only 2 months into the year. I view council contingency as some of those hardship things that come to council that we really like to help other service groups or other members to get things going. So it troubles me that that's where the funds are coming from. I understand it's needed. So just maybe as a side note, proactively going into our next round of budget deliberations, I'd like to see us create something where we're not stuck in a bind like this again. Thank you.
No, I completely agree with that as well. Okay, so I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed? Motions. You're opposed?
No.
Okay.
I'm raising my hand at the closing of that.
Oh, you have a comment. Okay, Councillor Pearson?
Well, again, this, and maybe this is the segue into you're going to a mayor's caucus in a very short time. I think that as a district, I don't know what we can do, but we should be raising this ongoing negotiations with IAAFF, CUPE, and all that. There's a whole bunch of little municipalities that are bearing these huge costs when we could collectively be doing this for our firefighters, i.e. the West Shore or something like that. So I don't know what my motion would look like is at least let's raise the profile of it. I'd like to put a motion that the mayor communicate this at the mayor's caucus or something, and then FCM as well.
Well, actually, I can already share that this is a priority of UBCM.
Okay.
The executive has already heard this from the delegates, because what ends up happening is this happened in Vancouver with settled agreements with policing, right? So they all happened. The province refused to step in, and there were very dramatic emergency services and these contracts, which then spilled out throughout communities, which some communities can no longer afford. And then they don't have the adequate protective services that they need because they can't afford them, and they're stuck. And so that is something, that's a position already of the UBCM that is now working into the advocacy to the province. The province has fired back and has attacked municipal governments for exempt staff wages and the like, because then they say that their ADMs and their people then are driving up their wages because they feel that they should be in line or higher than what our exempt staff make. You could argue, well, you guys don't deal with the same level of responsibilities and the like, back and forth. So that's where it'll be interesting now to see before the election if some sort of provincial paper comes out saying we're creating this to, because you see documents come from the Taxpayers Federation and how it criticizes local government for the rising costs of their staff. And so we saw before the last election, the local government audit, where they formed that auditor's office that was going to audit all the local governments, and they did 2 for like millions of dollars in 3 years or something. So now it'll be interesting to see what comes out of the province. But the UBCM is well aware of this because it's driving everything up. Then it all starts to spill over. It's exactly what you said, Councillor Pearson. Yeah.
So is there, I guess, is there a motion that we can make to write a letter from the mayor's chair to say that, particularly with these negotiations, right? You know, I can appreciate the wages creeping up, but if somebody doesn't start the ball rolling, you know, little municipality of Sioux could maybe get on the map for writing something. So, anyways, I would make a motion that the mayor pen a letter.
Well, it's already in the works with the executive.
I'm talking specifically to the negotiations with big unions, not about the wages of the municipal staff.
No, but what the UBCM is looking at is the bargaining piece, and how that's impacting local governments and their ability to pay for protective services. And so when you have, you know, a powerful union like the IAFF stepping in, there's some communities that simply can't even afford bargaining.
So then they run out, they can't even staff their departments. Right, and it filters out. So it is there, but your other option is to look at quickly putting together a resolution for the AVICC, because usually things flow through that way, and see what flows through in that regard, I think would be your starting point. But I can also share with you after UBCM next week what the outcome of that is. So does that meet your expectation?
Yes.
And it'll be there. It'll be on my radar anyway when I'm there. Okay. We've dealt with the RCMP report. No new business, so we have the correspondence listings, January 18th to Feb 6th. Move receipt by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any discussion? Yes. Councillor Pearson?
Is Mr. Terrence Martin's letter in there somewhere?
I don't think so, because he also said that he looked for it and didn't see it. And what I think occurred there is that it didn't go through. This is typically what ends up going through info. When it just hits us, staff aren't even aware that we've received it. Or if it hits a few councillors, it doesn't flow through. So that's where I've told them that I can forward the email on, and then it'll cycle through next council meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Casper?
Yeah, it's just in reference to the letter that came from the chamber that went to all the municipalities. Sorry.
Yes.
All the municipalities in the CRD. So one thing that I think we should take note of is that Souk has one of the lowest business ratios, tax ratios, compared to the other jurisdictions. And, you know, we shouldn't be worried about taking a race to the bottom in lowering, you know, the tax rates, because when you compare them to the other jurisdictions, and this myth that, oh, Souk's business taxes are extremely high, well, no, that's not the case compared to other jurisdictions.
Yeah, that was the January 23rd. I
Yes,
remember that
yes.
Yeah. letter from the
chamber.
From the chamber.
So it's on page 83
Yep.
of our budget, or our agenda.
Yeah, we should draft a response.
Well, yeah, you know, and also, you know, because it's the kind of thing that perhaps should be more widely circulated, including to the chamber. I'm assuming our chamber would have got a copy of this, and other businesses.
Yeah.
So when you start looking at how they did their calculation and the multiplier, and you start doing the comparison with the different jurisdictions, Souk is well down at the bottom. Even though it's nearly on the bottom of the list, it's well beyond or down there as far as the rates. We're actually even lower than what the ratio is for Langford.
Yeah.
And Langford, you know, they're the friend of business.
Okay,
Well,
so perhaps, do you want to make a motion then that we draft a
try
letter?
to convey this message.
Yeah,
right?
we send a response letter to the chamber outlining the district's property taxes, something to that effect.
Well, just the ratio that they've used.
Right, well, it's in response to their letter. We're describing our property taxes. Is there a seconder for that motion?
Yes.
Moved by Councillor Casper and seconded by Councillor Pearson. Any discussion on sending a response letter? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. And then lastly, to receive the rest for information. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by Councillor Ray. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay. To be sent out. Okay, that brings us to 11. We have mayor and council reports. Does anyone have any updates? Councillor Casper?
I have to give a report.
Microphone.
I have to give a report, and I'll try to be as quick as I can. Okay, that's fine. So I attended, at the pleasure of council, to attend the LGLA forum. And I just want to give you a brief outline and some information that I came back with. This information, I'm hoping, will be posted on the district website And Councillor Pearson, if you could help me. Those 3. And what I wanted to touch on was this, that the forum had an attendance of 154 individuals. The subject matter that was discussed there, and I'm going to be very brief. The subject titles were, "I'm right and you're an idiot," "The toxic state of public discourse and how to clean it up." Another subject area was communication styles for constructive, effective communications. Another item was called Aboriginal awareness and communication. And another subject area was called bullying, bad behavior, business as usual. There are 3 more subject areas: understanding and engaging diversity. The next one was collaborative conversations. And then the last one was ethics and communication. So what I've handed out to all the council members, and I'm sorry for not getting enough copies for staff, but there were storyboards done that actually talked through the items that I related to. And one of the things that I found, I'm not saying this in a negative way, but it was quite disturbing to hear that not only does our municipality have communication issues that arise, both in a positive and a negative fashion, but it's throughout the province. And I just want to talk about one key area, and that was under the subject matter that dealt with bad behaviors. And I took notes. And the notes that I took, because I was in listen mode, came from other representatives. And these are the comments that I think all of us should think about, because all of us in this room, whether it's the public, whether it's the staff or council members, are part of the solution. Comments like this. Bad behaviors are indicated by going around council, false news, public bullies, building alliances to divide the community, water cooler decision making, feeling left out, presenting poor public image, lack of information to council and the public, not working in a collaborative fashion with council and staff, more public engagement. These are all the things that I think all of us talked about, what our staff have talked about, and even the public has talked about. So I really felt it was timely when I did attend. And I think that what my message is that if all of us, including the public, and I think the public, I'm going to ask staff to post on our district website these visuals, because they are, words or visuals are worth 1,000 words, so to speak. And I think it's important that the public see the kind of issues that local government, elected representatives, and even employees are facing on a day-to-day basis. There was one message that one of the presenters said, and I think this is important to actually state, is that not one person ever gets elected or runs for election to ruin their community. None of them stand up at a public meeting and say, I want you to vote for me because I want to ruin the place. That never happens. Staff and council, people who are elected, they are there because they want to provide the best possible service to those who pay the bill. I think that has to be resonated throughout the community. And I appreciate the concerns and comments that come from the public, from the media, and others. And I think that it's incumbent on all of us to try to learn from what we hear, but what others are doing. And so I would hope members could look at these storyboards, that the storyboards be posted on the website as an example of that LGLA forum that was presented. And I think that it's an opportunity to show or to clearly demonstrate that our council take these matters seriously, our staff take these matters seriously, and to convey that message to the public. So I just want to thank council for sending me there. I haven't submitted my expenses, but I will guarantee you they will be lower than what was outlined. And so I'm free to answer any questions.
How many pages should we have had?
7.
I'm missing one.
Okay.
The question was the number of pages.
Yeah.
7, you say?
Yes, yeah, it was 7. So we'll deal with that, and we'll make sure you have the update.
I have 6 as well.
Yes.
Thank you for bringing these. I think the infographics are great.
Yeah.
I'm glad it's a visual scribe. I'm glad they were there.
And these are available on the LGLA website. And so that's, anybody
Number
can
7.
actually view this stuff. Oh, do you have it there?
We found number 7.
Oh, perfect.
That's great. Thank you, Councillor Loggins, and thank you, Councillor Casper.
Okay,
Any
I'm sorry
questions for Councillor Casper and his LGLA? Councillor Pearson?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Casper. And I know you and I haven't had a lot of chance to talk about this, but the essence of what this, and it's interesting because over the weekend I was researching some things online, and there was a website posted about a phenomena that's happening in British Columbia about councillors and mayors quitting across their province. And so if you dig into a couple of different websites and there's posts on all over the place that people are actually staying away from public office, and they don't have a lot of experts don't have the solutions, and they don't have the underlying reasons for it, and they're saying it's simple as what you say. It's a tough job, and the demands are higher and higher, and that there's access to people. So any thoughts on that around that whole? I know that's a pretty wide open spectrum there, but
I can't give you specific answers to that. I know that some people do comment on that. There was some discussion about 3-year and 4-year terms. Really, it's not an easy business to get into. And, I've worn the storm many years. And I admire people who run for office, believe you me. I think it's important. And it's all part of the democratic process. But after saying that, I think there's an opportunity. It shows that an organization through UBCM, the LGLA, are taking these types of matters very seriously, because these types of forums are brought forward from council members. The input they receive from the public and from others kind of help demonstrate that it's a concern on their mind. And everybody's trying to look for solutions to solve a problem. And there are no easy answers. It would be nice, in an ideal world. Oh, we'll fix that, no problem. And 9 times out of 10, you can't, because there's always something that's going to come in the way. So I just think that, and I hope that members and members of the public, when they have an opportunity to see what I learned, what I experienced with other elected officials, and there were some staff persons there, that it gives you a kind of an idea as to what others are facing. And more importantly, I think it's incumbent for everybody to perhaps take a pause. And that pause is maybe to do more listening, do more understanding, accept the fact that we all don't have to agree on everything. And conflict is not a bad thing, because we can have opposing views which represent a conflict. But if everybody goes away understanding what their differences are, what their needs and wants are, and what yours are to try to make things better, then hopefully that's what will happen. And, there are times I've made a lot of mistakes, believe you me. And I wish I hadn't done certain things, said things, or acted a certain way. all of us have been in situations like that in your life. And it takes a lot of work to try to make sure that you have more inclusivity and that people are more involved. So anyway, I didn't answer your question. I just got to talk for 5 minutes more.
Well, it was a nice message to hear. Thank you, Councillor Casper. Other updates? Councillor Pearson? Microphone, Councillor Pearson.
Yes, I attended the Wanapeuca Water Distribution Commission on February the 7th, and it was the first meeting of the year, so re-elected was Bob Graminga as the Wanapeuca chair, and Gordy Logans as the vice chair, which it's been View Royal for a number of years, but it's moved over to Colwood. So water capacity is at 100%. Yes, which was good. There were some projects that are on there. Nothing for Souk. Along the Souk Road, I think the biggest project is replacing the pipe somewhere just along by Luxton Road, and that's in process right now. And that's an extension of the water line. The provincial government is fronting some money there because of the project is they want to do some other service work there, so they've advanced that process. That's it from Wanapeuca Water Commission. There was some discussion on the weighted votes. Yeah. So currently it was a one member, one vote situation, but their actual terms of reference right back to their inception was weighted vote. So Souk, as an example, had one vote, or had 3 votes for every time I was there, but we were only using one. Langford gets 6 as an example, Machosen gets 1, Highlands get 1. So anyways, there was a lot of discussion on that, and there's been some recommendations to go to the board, because in fact it was had been done incorrectly. However, the person from the legislative board, I'm trying to think of his name, he was there, they looked at it from a cursory look and as deep as they could dive, and it wouldn't have had any implications as far as, because most things that are voted on are unanimous there. So that was about it. That's
Great.
All I have to report.
Okay, I'll share my update. Yes, I'll go first. Okay. Or did you want to go first? Doesn't matter. I'll go first. Okay. Sorry. The CRD, the regional growth strategy that we supported has not been supported across the board. I believe only 5 municipalities endorsed it and all the rest did not. So that's going to kick in a different process of sorts. The board meeting last week was adjourned early. We only dealt with time-sensitive matters because of the Wednesday storm. So everything has been pushed off and looking to schedule a special meeting if they can achieve quorum or not. If not, it'll go into the next board meeting. The committee appointments at the CRD are done annually. So this year, my committee list is the Integrated Resource Management Advisory Committee. I'm the chair of that. A Hospitals and Housing committee has been established. It was a task force, I believe, under the previous hospital board, so I'm vice chair there. First Nations committee, vice chair, and then I'm on Regional Parks and Environmental Services. And I missed the last meeting, so thank you, Councillor Casper, for taking care of things. This cold has been going on for weeks. I actually had it in my eye at one point, and a family member hospitalized. So that gave me a real sense of the state of our emergency and health facilities overall in our community and at Vic General. And that's just made me fall a bit behind. So I appreciate everyone for pulling together and to staff for helping me get through the last little while. At the Souk Food Chi, both Director Hicks and myself endorsed or put together a notice of motion. The CRD has an agricultural task force, so we wanted Souk Food Chi to have representation on that because the only closest area would be Machosen, and we have all of our regions, so that occurred. And we both spoke at the AGM last week.
Souk Bike Club will be this coming Friday, and I'll be speaking there because Harborview will be opening officially this spring. There's a soft opening now. Trail signage and the like have gone in. Volunteers have been mobilized and the like, and the first phase up to Mount Quimper has been completed, so there will be a grand opening for that. Out of the my health summit that occurred last year, there's still a few community groups rolling out some items and putting information together. One thing that evolved was just spirituality, whatever that may mean to somebody. So in light of what's occurred recently in Quebec City and what's happening, down south, there is a multi-faith day being held on March the 3rd, and Transition Town Souk is taking that on. Council and staff may recall us passing the zoning and issuing permits to the Souk Options for Community Living. This is the facility for both adults and kids with disabilities. So I was at their grand opening last week. It's a beautiful building, many contractors involved, suppliers putting in materials and labors, and it's a great place. There was a lot of expression from those who spoke of gratitude to council and staff. So many thanks for everyone's efforts. The Souk Girl Guides, all 13 of them were here at the district office a few weeks ago. We did a tour downstairs, ended up in chambers, tried to talk about women in politics, what leadership means, and what this room looks like. I invited them to come tonight, but I'm sure they have other things to do. We did have a mini debate here, a little skit. There was staff, there was council, there was the public. It was a very spirited discussion, and the question was, should Helgeson have more street lights? And it passed with a 5-2. The Lieutenant Governor, as you know, was in Souk visiting schools, visiting 3. We started off her tour. We're the only schools that she visited on the South Island. Her goal is to visit 150 by June. And I went to our food bank and had a whole in-depth tour on a Wednesday to understand how their program works. Again, a lot of appreciation to council in support of the fridges, the milk, and the Christmas trucks and the like. You may have heard me on the media. I was on CFAX with Al Faraby talking about Highway 14. That was following the accident that occurred in Langford. Even though it was in Langford, it was still on Souk Road. That also led to a news clip with CTV Vancouver Island. I spent 40 minutes with them and was reduced to a 10-second clip. That didn't even seem relevant, but that's how it works, I suppose. Times Colonist phoned, and then I was with CBC Radio discussing the census results. And Czech News is now following up with me. That was the call I had to take earlier, and that's regarding the life of a commuter and the census as well. So we'll be chasing down time with them. And I'm working on a piece for the primary health initiatives that I hope to share. And I always try to angle that into our talk. We need more health services, but it always seems to get clipped out. So I think I need a better platform for that. Next week is the UBCM executive is meeting in Victoria here at Local Government House, and the intent is Advocacy Day to put forward a platform to the province or to the new government once it's formed. These are all issues that come from local governments across BC. Of course, the Mayor's Caucus is meeting the exact same week with the same intention, so that's why with only 4 mayors sitting on the executive, we'll be spending time at the Mayor's Caucus just to see that we are similarly hitting the province. We hope to anyway, in the same ways, and to pick up pieces. Transit Commission is also meeting in the coming weeks, and I have a circle route meeting with other mayors in Port Renfrew and a Shaw TV interview coming up. It's a get to know Mayor Tate. I don't know why that's so interesting, but I guess it is. So I'll be there, and wish me luck. Hopefully it'll be better than the one I did last time. And Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to give a midterm report. We're halfway through this term. And I'm going to start by way of background. When I first looked to serving on council, I didn't consider I was pursuing a career in politics. I was looking to retire after nearly 30 years in the criminal justice system and searching for an opportunity to continue helping people. I believed that the skills I developed over those 30 years would be an asset to the work of a council and a foundation for providing leadership in the role of a councillor. While working in the field as a probation officer, I developed a very sharp sense of right and wrong, justice and injustice, and it came with the demanding responsibility of accountability. I wrote reports to judges from the provincial court right up to and including the BC Court of Appeal. At their direction, I investigated and wrote reports with recommendations on everything from theft to murder and on custody of children, being accountable through examination and cross-examination in a court of law. I've been on the stand anywhere from 5 minutes on a breach to 7 hours in a dangerous offender hearing. I, certainly of all people, understand the need for integrity and truthfulness. I campaigned on being committed, fair and consistent, on due process and enforcement of the rules. In the election of 2011, I took the last seat with 1,592 votes, and in my run for re-election, I took 2,171 votes, the second highest ever received by a candidate in a Souk election. To me, it was a clear endorsement by the voting electorate for what I brought to the council table: objective, fair, consistent, and well-examined decisions. I also felt that with the return of 5 members of the previous council, that this too was a ringing endorsement the direction council was taking. I worked hard at making sure I followed through with my commitments to the people of Souk. I've attended 136 of 143 regular or special council meetings. I've expanded my responsibilities in this second term to include being appointed to the Executive Crest and elected to an executive position with the Vancouver Island Library Board. I've chaired the Community Grants Committee since 2012, as many of you know, a difficult and challenging position. In September of 2015, I was tasked by the Mayor to chair the hiring committee for the position of the CAO. I, as well as the members of the hiring committee, took our role very seriously, as this would be the 5th CAO, acting or permanent, since we took office in 2011. Over and above my regular time in my regular job responsibilities and commuting to downtown Victoria, traveling for work, attending to regular council business, and chairing the Community Grant Committee, I put in well over 40 hours of my personal time in that role. I was absolutely shocked when Mr. Bateman stood at the podium in this room on December the 14th, 2015, and accused me of conflict of interest with respect to the hiring committee's recommendation to council. Mr. Bateman questioned my role as chair in the process undertaken by those participating in the hiring committee. I found this very surprising coming from Mr. Bateman, as he has personally presented as an applicant to the Community Grants Committee and served on the Climate Change Action Committee. I would expect that he should be well aware that the committees only make recommendations to council, with council making a decision. Shortly after Mr. Bateman's unfounded accusation, I started receiving complaints as the acting mayor that a councillor was making disparaging remarks towards myself and the newly hired CAO at the local Legion, after which a social media post was made by Ms. Sankowski to her readers following up on Mr. Bateman's comments. Ms. Sankowski's post presented inaccurate information and then asked readers to wade in. For the record, the BC Public Service Agency does not have oversight of municipal governments, and their policies have no relevance to mayors and councillors, as we are not BC Public Service employees as implied by Ms. Sankowski's post of January the 8th, 2016. In my opinion, these 3 events have sparked what has become an unrelenting campaign of controversy for this council, primarily directed at me and the CAO, which has escalated into unfounded criticism of the mayor and attacks on staff, mainly our Director of Corporate Services, our Director of Finance, and now unfortunately seeping into attacks on our union staff. Information is being posted on social media that is not factual, which then gets shared onto Facebook pages and Twitter for the world to see. In my opinion, it is creating a fracture in the community, people unsure of what is true and what is false, with people jumping to conclusions and attacking one another for their opinions. Social media requires no truth. There has been little accountability, but thankfully that it is now changing as courts across Canada are awarding civil damages for defamation. In early January 2017, I sent Ms. Sankowski an email advising her of inaccuracies in her post. Souk's elected officials' remuneration stays the same. CAO ranges magnificently, which she did respond back to me, advising she does not pull content from SPN and does not modify her information. In terms of not pulling content, after a lengthy search of the internet, I was unable to find 2 of her posts, the Souk Nation's plans for Tim Hortons and the post on the attempted child abduction in Souk. On the second, that she does not correct information to her readers, I find disturbing. It also does not align with the Canadian Association of Journalists Ethics Guidelines. And for the record, our current CAO does not have the highest starting remuneration. Ms. Santowski maintains a policy that she does not wade into the personal lives of public figures. Well, that is not my experience. Last August, I was alerted to a post talking about the parking on West Coast Road and Grant Road with a picture of my personal vehicle at my home. Yes, parked the wrong way on the street, but in Sun River. Who took the picture? Who's hanging around my home taking pictures of my property? Perhaps it is the same person who unbolted an unused gate, allowing our dog to escape the safety of our backyard. Thankfully, no harm came to him, but he was clearly panicked when we found him. It has not just stayed in the local theatre. Last June, Miss Tess Van Straten of Czech News did a story that virtually slammed myself and our CAO, including flashing our pictures across the screen, because I had my solicitor send Ms. Santowski a letter demanding she remove defamatory comments against me from the internet. To my dismay, I received no phone call or email from Ms. Van Straten and absolutely no courtesy shown to either myself or our CAO to ensure the story reflected a fair and balanced account. Finally, there have been many comments made to me about the December council meeting when staff were removed from this council chamber when a speaker was making accusations against District of Sault staff. I want to clarify for the people of Sault that this action was done because it is the law. In November 2013, WorkSafe BC enacted legislation that addressed workplace bullying and harassment. The WorkSafe BC site states, workplace bullying and harassment can take many forms, including verbal aggression, personal attacks, and other intimidating or humiliating behaviors, which was exactly what was occurring. I had a lengthy discussion with the prevention officer from WorkSafe BC, and he advised if the CAO fails the staff and does not take measures to protect them from this behavior, whether it is in this council chamber or in the district office, the District of Sault may face substantial fines. I have to say I have never in my life worked in such a toxic environment as I have in the last 14 months. I've been called a crook, a liar, a criminal. I've been accused of conflict of interest and engaging in illegal behavior. I don't think anyone should be proud to actively engage in a smear campaign to harass and intimidate an elected official to resign, which is exactly how I feel. I never imagined, obviously naively so, that I would ever be a target of such a nasty campaign. It has been unrelenting and all-consuming for myself and my family. People say I need to grow a thicker skin, but that is not me. I am about caring, understanding, and kindness. For me, it's about lending a hand to help others, helping them up, not pushing them down. But this campaign has expanded to the staff of the District of Sault. I constantly see staff targeted on social media and in this chamber, and I can see the negative effect this type of behavior is having on them. The Mayor, as the District of Sault's Chief Executive Officer, has tried to alleviate this bullying and harassment of our staff, only to be attacked and ridiculed on social media herself. I'm astounded by the behavior of people in our community who feel it is their prerogative to try and run our CAO out of town by invading the personal space of her home, or to have such a sense of entitlement they believe it is their right to make it a mission to get her fired. A person that was duly hired by a majority of this council and confirmed unanimously by this council. I have tried to not let this get the better of me, and people have said, don't give in, they'll win. But I have learned in life not every battle is worth fighting, and I no longer want to fight this one. It has been grueling. I feel humiliated, intimidated, demeaned, and defamed on social media and in this chamber. This is not what I expected to endure in serving my community. So what once was a really good feeling of serving the public while sitting here on this council is now gone. However, I want to assure the people of Sault that in my capacity as your elected councillor and for the remainder of my term, I will continue to serve with the same determination, commitment, and dedication as I have done so over the past 5 years. But it is with great disappointment, however, that I am formally announcing this evening I will not seek re-election in 2018. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ray. Okay, On that note, I will look for a motion to, oh, pardon me, we have a report of in-camera resolutions. 12.1, there are two from December 12th and January the 23rd.
Your Worship, you don't have to do anything with that. Council already,
just noted.
they already waived confidentiality.
Okay, so then as per 13, a motion to close the meeting, please, under section 91K of the Community Charter. Moved by Councillor Loggins, seconded by Councillor Berger. All those in favor, opposed, motion's carried. It's 10 o'clock. Thank you, media, for hanging out.